Chapter 1795. How is that possible? Ningyu took a few steps back and looked at Ziyun in shock. I'm only a mid-heavenly supreme cultivator, while Xieyang and Lan Chao are both late-phase Saint Realm cultivators. How am I capable of dealing with the two of them? Then what do you mean? Ziyun's face darkened when she heard Ningyu's words. You're not dealing with Xieyang and Lan Chao, but you want me to deal with the remaining people from the Cloudy Wind Empire and Heavenly Dragon Empire? What are your intentions? Nothing much. I just want to tell you that Xieyang and Lan Chao will definitely be killed by Dan Zhong. Ningyu shrugged and said casually, my mission is to deal with Dan Kai after he wins. Are you sure you're not joking? Ziyun's mouth was slightly agape as disbelief filled her face. If Ningyu said he would deal with Xieyang and Lan Chao, Ziyun would not have such a reaction. However, Ziyun was extremely shocked that Ningyu wanted to deal with Dan Zhong. She even looked at Ningyu as if he was an idiot. In Ziyun's view, Xieyang and Lan Chao should be stronger than Dan Zhong in terms of overall strength. After all, Xieyang and Lan Chao came from a higher plane and definitely had trump cards. But now, Ningyu said that Dan Zhong would win. How could Ziyun not be shocked and astonished? What's the point of joking? Just watch. Dan Zhong will definitely win. Ningyu smiled. Why don't we swap? I'll deal with the remaining cultivators from the Cloudy Wind Empire and Heavenly Dragon Empire, while you stay behind to deal with Dan Zhong and Xieyang. Ziyun hesitated when she heard how certain Ningyu was. At this moment, Ziyun's thoughts had already changed. Perhaps, Dan Zhong could really defeat Xieyang and Lan Chao? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was possible. Bang! Bang! However, just as Ziyun was about to make her choice, something happened at the cave entrance that left her dumbfounded. Xieyang and Lan Chao punched out at the same time. One left and one right, two punches landed on Dan Zhong's body at the same time. Two crisp sounds rang out. Then, like a kite with its string cut, Dan Hen flew straight towards the entrance of the cave. I'll deal with the remaining people from the Heavenly Dragon Empire and the Cloudy Wind Empire. You go and deal with the victor of the battle over there. The sudden change caused Ziyun to be slightly stunned. But very quickly, Ziyun recovered from her shock. She hurriedly said to Ningyu, when everything is settled, we will split the celestial crystals in the celestial crystal vein in half. Shio. As she spoke, Ziyun's silhouette flashed and she charged out. In the Heavenly Dragon Empire's Xie clan, aside from a late-phase Saint Realm like Xieyang, there was also an initial-phase Saint Realm Xieliang and two pinnacle heavenly sovereigns. Apart from Lan Chao, who was a late-stage saint, the Lan family of the Cloudy Wind Empire also had Lan Ming and Lan Hue, who were early-stage saints. On the surface, Ziyun's cultivation might seem to be in the middle phase of the Saint Realm, but her true fighting prowess was extremely terrifying. Rumble. Ziyun didn't make a move, but the moment she made a move, it was a killing move. In just a single exchange, she had killed two pinnacle Sky Supremes from the Xie family. You. How dare you offend our Xie clan? Xie Liang's pupils shrank, and he even stuttered. So what if I offended you? Ziyun couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Xie Liang. She dashed out again and locked her target on Xie Liang. Let's leave quickly. Seeing that Ziyun had chosen to attack Xie Liang, Lan Hue and Lan Ming felt that their opportunity had come. They immediately tore the void and entered. Because Lan Chao was still fighting Dan Zhong, Lan Hue and Lan Ming did not choose to leave after entering the void. Instead, they moved closer to Lan Chao. Poochie. Perhaps because she didn't notice Lan Hue and Lan Ming leaving, Ziyun's main attention was on Xie Liang. 3 moves. In just 3 moves, Xie Liang was beaten to the point where he vomited blood and his face was pale. Die. Ziyun grabbed the void with her right hand and quickly pushed it out. Boom. A terrifying Yuan Qi shock wave almost reached Xie Liang's neck in the blink of an eye. No, looking at the Yuan Qi shock wave, Xie Liang's pupils shrank and he hurriedly wanted to beg for mercy. However, before Xie Liang could finish begging for mercy, he stopped abruptly. The terrifying shock wave directly swept past Xie Liang's neck. Thump. As for Xie Liang, his eyes were wide open and his body suddenly fell backward. At this moment, early-stage Saint Xie Liang, who came from a high-level plane, had died in battle. Gasp! Gasp! In the void, Lan Hua and Lan Ming gasped at the same time when they saw that Xie Liang had been easily killed. Their strength was actually almost on par with Xie Liang. Xie Liang had been killed in 2 or 3 moves. It was conceivable that they would not be able to last more than a few moves if they went out. Fortunately, Lan Chao is about to kill Dan Zhong. Lan Ming turned his head to look at the situation at the cave entrance and felt slightly relieved. As long as Dan Zhong was killed, Ziyun would definitely not dare to cause trouble for them. This was because no matter how strong Ziyun was, it would be difficult for him to fight against Lan Chao and Xie Yang at the same time. Poochie. Poochie. Dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. Lan Ming's relief did not last for long. His hair began to stand on end. 2 consecutive sounds of people vomiting blood could be heard from the battlefield not far away. Lan Ming was very familiar with the 2 martial artists who vomited blood. One of them was Xie Yang, and the other was Lan Chao from the Lan family. Die. When it rains, it pours. Just as Xie Yang and Xie Liang were vomiting blood from the bombardment, Ziyun quickly rushed over. Now that Xie Liang was dead, Ziyun's target naturally fell on Lan Ming and Lan Hua. Help! At such a critical moment, Lan Ming and Lan Hua shouted without hesitation. How dare you! Lan Ming and Lan Hua's roars attracted Lan Chao's attention. Lan Chao was extremely furious when he saw Ziyun rushing over with a murderous aura. He shouted with all his strength. Whoosh! However, Lan Chao had overlooked one thing. He was fighting Dan Zhong. As the saying went, in a battle between experts, even the slightest mistake could result in death. When Lan Chao was fighting Dan Zhong, he had shifted his attention to Lan Hua and Lan Ming. This was a huge mistake. He had to bear the consequences of his own mistake. Dan Zhong opened his mouth wide and spat out 2 beams of cold light. The beam of cold light aimed at Xie Yang was blocked by Xie Yang with all his might. However, it was very effective against Lan Chao's cold light. Although Lan Chao dodged slightly to the side at the critical moment, his left arm was still cut by the cold light, leaving a long bloody scar. I'll deal with you later. Lan Chao knew the severity of the situation. To be more precise, Lan Chao had chosen to abandon Lan Ming and Lan Hua so that he would be invincible. Lan Chao, you can't just ignore us. Lan Chao's action of abandoning a pawn to save the king had completely made Lan Ming and Lan Hua despair. Chapter 1796. However, without Lan Chao's protection, how could the 2 of them escape? Moreover, since Ziyun had decided to kill them, she would not give up until she achieved her goal. Her figure flickered as she waved her hands repeatedly. In an instant, several Yuan Qi shockwaves swept out, rushing towards Lan Ming and Lan Hua from all directions. Fight. Under the threat of death, people could always erupt with astonishing energy. Lan Ming and Lan Hua were like that. The 2 of them looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. In the next instant, the 2 of them retaliated at the same time, wanting to fight to the death with Ziyun. Ningyu, do you really think that pill puppet will win? After watching Ziyun's battle, Elder Tianji's gaze shifted to the other battlefield. In Elder Tianji's opinion, Lan Ming and Lan Hua would definitely lose. Although there might be some twists and turns in the process, the outcome would not be unexpected. The terrifying battle strength that Ziyun had displayed when she killed Xie Liang was comparable to a peak late-stage sage. In other words, even 2 mid-stage sage experts could be instantly killed by Ziyun, not to mention Lan Ming and Lan Hua, who were early-stage sage experts. Since the outcome was already decided, Elder Tianji's attention shifted to the other battlefield. In truth, Elder Tianji had secretly divined just now. According to the divination, Dan Zhong and Xie Yang were evenly matched, and neither had an overwhelming advantage. But from Ningyu's words, it seemed that Dan Zhong would definitely win. This situation naturally made Elder Tianji very puzzled. Ever since he had come into contact with Ningyu, Elder Tianji had begun to have some doubts about the divination art that he had learned. This was because there had been several times when the results had deviated from what his divination had shown. It was easy to explain once, but what about the second and third time? As the only person in the immortal spirit realm who had grasped the divination art, It was reasonable for Elder Tianji to doubt the authenticity of the divination art. According to the records, the original divination art was not in the immortal spirit realm, but in a higher plane. Therefore, the divination art that Elder Tianji had grasped was learned from a handwritten copy. More or less. Ningyu's reply made Elder Tianji roll his eyes, a little speechless. When he was conversing with Ziyun earlier, he swore that Dan Ming would definitely win. But now, he sounded uncertain again. How could the Elder of Heavenly Secrets not be speechless? Then are you really going to deal with the winner of Dan Hua and Lan Chao's group later? The Elder of Heavenly Secrets asked again. No matter who won, Ningyu would have to face the winner in the end. In truth, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets also hoped that Dan Kai would win. This was because Lan Chao and Xie Yang were both at the late stage of the Sage Realm. Once they won, Ningyu would have to deal with the two late-stage Sage Realm warriors. Once Dan Zhong won, Ningyu would only have to face himself. Ideally, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets hoped that Dan Ling would win. Of course, all of this was under ideal circumstances. As for which side would win, Old Man Tianji had no idea. That was because he couldn't divine it at all. Wrong. Ningyu shook his head and shifted his gaze in another direction. Ningyu was looking at the bronze gate. It's not me dealing with the victor between them, but Ninglu. Ninglu? The Elder of Heavenly Secrets opened his mouth in disbelief. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets knew Ninglu very well. He was at the mid-stage of the Sky Supreme level, and his overall strength was comparable to a peak Sky Supreme. If Ningyu had asked Qilin to fight, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets might not have been so surprised. After all, Qilin was very powerful. But the Elder of Heavenly Secrets couldn't understand why Ningyu had asked Ninglu to fight. Not to mention Ninglu's age, even if he was very powerful, he was only equivalent to a peak Sky Supreme. Asking Ninglu to step forward and help, wasn't this clearly a trap for Ninglu? Don't be fooled by Ninglu's appearance. How could Ningyu not know what the Elder of Heavenly Secrets was thinking? He waved his hand and said, Ninglu looks like a child of 6 or 7, but he has lived for tens of thousands of years. How is that possible? Before the Elder of Heavenly Secrets could react, Yunmu blurted out, there can't be someone in the celestial spirit realm who has lived for tens of thousands of years, unless he survived from the ancient times. So what if you believe me or not? Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, your current mission is to swiftly retreat and not let the aftershock of the battle affect you. I'll say the ugly words first, if you're killed by the aftershock of the battle, then I won't step forward to help. Don't worry, I promise I won't let you help. Yunmu's expression was a little ugly. But now that Yunmu needed Ningyu's help, he could only choose to keep his mouth shut. Crack, crack. Just as Yunmu shut his mouth, on the other side, Ziyun threw 2 punches at Lan Ming's and Lan Hua's hearts. 2 cracking sounds rang out. Lan Ming and Lan Hua's eyes widened, and their auras plummeted. What a pity. Ningyu stared at Lan Ming and Lan Hua, whose auras were rapidly weakening, with a look of pity on his face. If he devoured both of them, he would at least be able to reach the late stage of the Sky Supreme, or even the peak stage of the Sky Supreme. Ningyu wasn't a fool. The energy in Lan Ming and Lan Hua's bodies wasn't pure, so he couldn't purify it with his own ability. Unless someone was willing to help, he could only watch helplessly with so much energy. However, although Lan Ming and Lan Hua couldn't devour it, the distant Dan puppet could. Ningyu had been observing it for a long time. The Dan puppet fighting Lan Chao and Xie Yang was both a Yuan Qi Dan puppet and a Soul Dan puppet. In other words, if he devoured the late-stage Saint Dan puppet, Ningyu's cultivation would reach the peak stage of the Sky Supreme without any obstruction. After all, the energy in the Dan puppet's body was extremely pure. Done. I'll leave the rest to you. Just when Ningyu was letting his imagination run wild, Ziyun's figure flashed and flew to Ningyu's side. She said indifferently, no matter who wins in that battle, I will not make a move. Don't worry, I definitely won't let you help. Ningyu smiled and didn't say anything else, focusing on the battlefield. Don't be fooled by Ningyu's solemn and confident appearance. In truth, he was more nervous than anyone else. Since it was a battle, all sorts of changes could happen. As Ningyu contacted Ninglu, he also communicated with the little Chelene in the Tower of Ascension. Prepare for both. Ningyu didn't want to be anxious at that time. If Dan Puppet won, then Ningyu would let Ninglu fight it out. Ninglu was the world tree, so he had a fatal restraint on Dan Puppet. But if Lan Chao and Xie Yang won, they would have to rely on the little Chelene. However, the little Chelene's cultivation was still at the early stage of the Sage Realm, and it hadn't advanced to the mid-stage of the Sage Realm. Chapter 1797. If Xie Yang and Lan Chao won in the end, Ningyu would really be worried that the little Chelene wouldn't be their opponent. After all, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. The little Chelene wasn't like Ninglu, who had a fatal restraint on Xie Yang and Lan Chao. Up to you. Seeing Ningyu's solemn expression, Ziyun shrugged her shoulders and no longer spoke. Since Ziyun and Ningyu didn't speak, Old Man Tianji and Yun Mu naturally wouldn't speak foolishly. In an instant, the entire area became quiet. As time passed, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. At the start of the battle, Xie Yang and Lan Chao still had a slight advantage. But as time went on, their decline became more obvious. Especially after Lan Chao was ambushed by Dan Zhong, the two of them were in an absolutely disadvantageous position. If this situation carried on, without any external help, Xie Yang and Lan Chao would definitely lose. Could it be that he really knew that Pill Puppet would win? Ziyun glanced at Ningyu from the corner of her eyes, feeling extremely shocked in her heart. At the start, when Ningyu said that Pill Puppet would win, Ziyun's reaction was to snort disdainfully and not believe it. But now, the situation was very clear. Without any external help, Dan Zhong would definitely win. Under this kind of situation, Ziyun's view of Ningyu naturally wavered. Looks like I have to be careful in case I get tricked by him. Retracting her gaze, Ziyun secretly became cautious. Before Ningyu appeared in Four Corner City, the immortal crystal vein was divided among the four empires. After Ningyu appeared, he practically used a forceful method to remove the Thousand Leaf Empire's Jin family. Not only that, Ningyu even used the hidden Pill Puppet at the entrance of the immortal crystal vein to deal with Xie Yang and Lan Chao. Furthermore, Ningyu conveniently dragged her into the water. Ziyun knew that she shouldered a huge responsibility, and she absolutely couldn't fall in Four Corner City. Swish. At this moment, a figure suddenly sped over from the direction of the bronze door. In the blink of an eye, this figure appeared in front of Ningyu. Ninglu. Without a doubt, this martial artist was Ninglu, who hurried over. Ningyu, aren't you being too unkind? You didn't even tell me if there was something good. Ninglu thumped Ningyu's chest and grumbled, others might not know that I like Dan Kai, but how could you not know? The world tree had a deadly restraining effect on Danny. The energy contained in Dan Hen's body was also extremely pure. Under such circumstances, Ninglu definitely liked Dan Xiong and the pleasure of devouring that pure energy. Don't talk big. Take a look at Dan Kai over there and see if there's a way to kill him. Ningyu pointed at Dan Kai, who was fighting with Xie Yang and Lan Chao in the distance, and said in a low voice, if you have a way, then stay. If you don't, then get the hell out of here. Hearing Ningyu's words, Ninglu's gaze shifted to the distant battlefield. Hiss. Ninglu sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw what it was. Late-stage saint. Ninglu turned to look at Ningyu and said, and it's the kind of Dan Kai that's infinitely close to the pinnacle of the saint realm? You've probably lost your mind by asking me to kill him, right? Why do you have so much to say? Ningyu said coldly, the battle over there is still ongoing. After Dan Kai wins, his strength will drop by many times at the very least. I'm just asking if you have a way to kill him. I don't want to hear anything else. Even if Dan Kai's strength will be affected, he'll still have the battle prowess of an early-stage saint, or even a mid-stage saint. At this moment, Ninglu's expression finally turned solemn, and he said, to be honest, I'm not his match right now. If you're not his match, then why are you still talking nonsense here? Get the hell out of here. Ningyu glanced coldly at Ninglu, then raised his right leg and was about to kick Ninglu's butt. At the same time, Ningyu's consciousness surged, and he began to contact the little Chelene in the Tower of Yuzuan. Actually, unless it was absolutely necessary, Ningyu really didn't want the little Chilean to come out and help. Because once the little Chilean came out, it would definitely reveal its true cultivation. At that time, what if Ziyun saw that the little Chilean's cultivation was only at the early stage saint, and she had evil thoughts? Therefore, the best solution was for Ning Lu to take action and kill Dan Kai. Don't! Ning Lu hurriedly dodged to the side and dodged Ning Yu's attack. He patted his chest and guaranteed, "If you join forces with me, we can definitely kill that Dan Kai." "Sigh, I'd like to join forces with you, but the situation doesn't allow it." Ning Yu sighed. "Do you think there's only one Dan Kai in the immortal crystal vein? There's an early stage Saint Dan Kai in the vein not far from the cave entrance." Ning Lu hurriedly shifted his gaze to the cave entrance. As I thought. Ning Lu's originally solemn expression became even more solemn. After some thought, Ning Lu said solemnly, "If I can increase my strength a little more, I guarantee that I can kill that Dan Kai." With a thought, Ning Yu took out 2 elixirs from his interspatial ring. He had obtained these 2 elixirs from Liu Chuanji, who had descended from a higher plane, back in the God Emperor Palace. Logically speaking, 1 elixir could allow Ning Yu to advance from the early stage Sky Supreme Realm to the pinnacle Sky Supreme Realm. But because Ning Yu had a special physique, the Battle God's physique, 1 elixir could only allow Ning Yu to advance from the early stage Sky Supreme Realm to the mid-stage Sky Supreme Realm. Even so, it was undeniable that the energy contained in the elixir was the most terrifying among all the elixirs that Ning Yu had seen. Ning Yu originally wanted to give one of the 2 elixirs to the Dark Emperor, but it was a critical period now, so Ning Yu decided to give both to Ning Lu. Good stuff. Ning Lu's expression changed when he saw the 2 elixirs in Ning Yu's hand. He immediately snatched the elixir and swallowed it. Buzz. Ning Lu's aura grew stronger and stronger as the elixir entered his stomach. His cultivation, which had been stagnant for a long time, was also rapidly rising. At this rate, Ning Lu's cultivation would soar to the late-stage Sky Supreme Realm in a few minutes at most. Ning Lu's cultivation was already at the pinnacle of the mid-stage Sky Supreme Realm, so it was reasonable for him to advance to the late-stage Sky Supreme Realm after swallowing 2 elixirs. This aura. Ziyun was shocked when she sensed the aura exuding from Ning Yu. Ziyun slapped her head and tried hard to recall. Ziyun was certain that she had sensed this aura before. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't recall what it was. Bang! Just as Ziyun was trying hard to recall, a muffled sound suddenly came from Ning Lu's body. At this moment, Ning Lu directly broke through his limit and advanced from the pinnacle of the mid-stage Sky Supreme Realm to the late-stage Sky Supreme Realm. Good. After advancing to the late-stage Sky Supreme Realm, Ning Lu clearly sensed that the dark golden branches in his body suddenly expanded and turned into 5 branches. Chapter 1798. Crack, crack. Ning Lu's cultivation had just reached the late Sky Supreme Realm when the outcome of the battle was already decided. Dan Zhong seized the opportunity and threw 2 punches. One landed on Xie Yang's head, while the other landed on Lan Chao's heart. 2 punches, 2 crisp sounds rang out. At that moment, Xie Yang and Lan Chao both fell to the ground. "Ziyun, as long as you help us, we guarantee that we won't let you suffer." Although they fell to the ground, Xie Yang and Lan Chao didn't die immediately. Under their strong will to live, the 2 of them shouted at Ziyun, "We've decided not to take the immortal crystals in the mine. We'll give them all to you. As long as you help us." This, hearing Xie Yang and Lan Chao's words, coupled with Dan Zhong's weakened state, Ziyun was tempted. In the face of such great benefits, Ziyun really wanted to take the risk and kill Dan Zhong, but Ziyun was clear. If she killed Dan Zhong, it would mean that she'd completely offend Ning Yu. Offending Ning Yu wasn't particularly scary. After all, Ning Yu's cultivation was only at the mid-Sky Supreme Realm. Most importantly, Ziyun couldn't see through the Chilean on Ning Yu's body. Killing Dan Zhong was easy. The difficult part was how to face Ning Yu. "It's up to you now." Taking a deep breath, Ziyun didn't seem to hear Xie Yang and Lan Chao's cries for help. She turned to Ning Yu and faintly said, "I hope that you can deal with that pellet puppet as soon as possible and send someone to mine the divine crystal vein with me." "No problem." Ningyu smiled slightly and immediately leaped toward the entrance of the mineral vein. Ninglu didn't stay idle when he saw Ningyu charge out. In fact, Ninglu's speed was much faster than Ningyu's, and he arrived at the entrance of the mineral vein before Ningyu. Fart. Fart. The moment Ningyu reached the mine's entrance, Xie Yang and Lan Chao were killed by Dan Zhong. Retreat. Originally, Ninglu wanted to attack immediately, but when he saw Dan Zhong's condition, he immediately chose to retreat. There was no other reason. Not only had Dan Kai killed Xie Yang and Lan Chao, but he had also used a secret technique to devour them. At this moment, Dan Kai's strength was not at the early stage of the Sage Realm as he had guessed, but at the late stage of the Sage Realm. With Ninglu's current battle prowess, he could fight against an early-stage Sage or even a mid-stage Sage Dan Jin. It was even possible for him to use the characteristics of the World Tree to kill Dan Kai, who was in the middle stage of the Sage Realm. But Ninglu knew his limits. He could kill an intermediate Sage Dan Jin, but that didn't mean he could kill an advanced Sage Dan Jin. Retreating at this time was the wisest choice. Since you're here, then stay. Before Ninglu could take a few steps back, the late-stage Saint Dan Jin at the entrance of the mine waved his hand and said indifferently, "You have an aura that makes my heart palpitate. I need to study it carefully." His voice fell. A terrifying suction force emerged from the body of the late-stage Saint Dan Jin and instantly came to Ninglu's side. Facing such a terrifying suction force, even if Ninglu resisted with all his might, he wouldn't be able to resist it. He's actually so strong. When Ziyun saw the aura emitted from the body of the late-stage Saint Dan Jin, she became serious. Although Ziyun was very confident in her strength and thought that she could sweep away all the martial artists below the peak Sage realm. But now, Ziyun knew that she was wrong, and she was very wrong. Normally, the strength of the Dan Jin in front of her was far above hers. I wonder if Ningyu has a way to deal with this Dan Jin. Thinking of this, Ziyun couldn't help but glance at Ningyu, who was about 10 meters away from the entrance of the mine. What should I do? Even though Ningyu was very anxious, his expression was still very calm. Everything was beyond his expectations and out of his control. Logically speaking, in the face of such a situation, unless a late-stage sage joined the battle, the result was already determined. However, Ningyu wasn't someone who would give up so easily. His eyes turned as he secretly thought of a countermeasure. "You come over too." Just as Ningyu was letting his imagination run wild, the late-stage sage Dan Jin waved his hand at him and said, "I've met two interesting little fellows at once. I didn't come in vain this time." Hearing the words of the late-stage sage Dan Jin, Ningyu pretended to be calm and said, "If I go over just because you ask me to, wouldn't I lose face?" Ha ha ha. Before the late-stage sage Dan Jin could reply, a loud laughter came from the mine. Rustle. Immediately after, a figure slowly walked out of the mine. As expected, he still came out. Ningyu did not turn around but stared into the eyes of the late-stage sage Dan Jin, trying to find some clues from his eyes. This time, Ningyu had made the right bet. From the reaction of the late-stage sage Dan Jin, Ningyu could basically confirm that he had an extremely close relationship with the early-stage sage Dan Jin that came out of the mine. Since they had a close relationship, everything had become simple. "Who do you think you are to want face?" The figure that walked out of the cave was not very tall and had an early-stage sage cultivation. He went straight to stand beside Ningyu and said disdainfully, "If Jiyu Yang didn't think you were interesting, do you think you would be able to live until now?" Ningyu knew that his chance had come. He gently turned around and looked at the early-stage sage Dan Jin, saying similarly disdainfully, "An early-stage sage cultivation dares to shout in front of me?" Chapter 1799. Jiyu Yang, what do you mean? Do you think I'm no match for this guy? Shirong knitted his brows with unhappiness on his face. His cultivation is in the middle phase Heavenly Sovereign Realm, while my cultivation is in the initial phase Saint Realm. If I can't kill him in 3 moves, then I would have lived my life in vain. That's not what I meant. I just wanted to say. Jiyu Yang shook his head to show that he wasn't looking down on Shirong. Shirong didn't listen to Jiyu Yang's explanation at all. He waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "You guys take a few steps back. I want to exchange pointers with this guy." I want him to know that there is always someone better out there. Spar is fine, but you must use your full strength. Jiyu Yang knew that he couldn't dissuade Shirong, so he lowered his voice. Also, don't kill Ningyu if you can. Keep him alive. I still need him for the time being. As he spoke, Jiyu Yang glanced at Ziyun from the corner of his eyes. Ziyun was a late phase saint, so her combat strength wasn't weak at all. Although Jiyu Yang was confident that he could defeat Ziyun, there was nothing he could do if Ziyun wanted to escape. Jiyu Yang was a pellet puppet, a combination of Yuan Qi pellet and soul pellet. His identity was bound to be sensitive. It didn't matter if Ziyun left, but if Ziyun spread the news that he was in Four Corner City, then he'd be doomed. After all, a pellet puppet was a good thing for human cultivators. I'm not a 3-year-old kid. I'm clear about this. Shirong's tone seemed to be extremely impatient. He turned around to look at Ningyu and said indifferently, the agreement of 3 moves can begin now. All of you, step back. Ningyu didn't answer Shirong immediately. Instead, he said to Tianji Oldman and Yun Mu, without my permission, no one is allowed to come near here. Russell. Tianji Oldman and the rest didn't hesitate and immediately retreated. Aside from Tianji Oldman and Yun Mu, even Ziyun couldn't help taking a few steps back. Take this. Seeing that Ningyu didn't answer him, Shirong's face turned cold and he instantly dashed out. Kai. Shirong's speed was too fast, causing friction with the air. Wait. Seeing that Shirong was about to arrive before him, Ningyu revealed a mocking expression and said in disdain, an initial phase saint pellet puppet like you wants to spar with a middle phase heavenly sovereign like me, and you dare to go back on your words? Whoosh. Shirong instantly stopped when he heard Ningyu's mocking words. He clenched his fists tightly and said coldly, when did I go back on my word? I seem to remember a certain Dan Zhong saying that he would give me 2 moves. Ningyu said exaggeratedly, don't tell me you know you're no match for me and want to renege on your promise. Humph. So what if I let you make 2 moves first? Shirong's chest heaved up and down, and he said with a cold snort, I'll stand where I am right now and not move. I'll take 2 moves from you. Shirong appeared to be very angry. Actually, it wasn't surprising. He was an initial phase Saint Realm Dan Kai, so how could he live after being ridiculed by a middle phase heavenly sovereign? Even if it was for his face, Shirong had to fulfill his promise and let Ningyu take 2 moves first. Ningyu's plan seemed to have succeeded as an arc rose on the corner of his lips. In the next moment, Ningyu suddenly stomped his feet on the ground and charged out like an afterimage. Ningyu's speed wasn't very fast. At the very least, he was much slower than Shirong. Overestimating yourself. Looking at the approaching Ningyu, Shirong sneered, I will let you know what is called, however. Before Ningyu could reach Shirong, before Shirong could finish his sneer, there was a sudden change. Jiyu Yang pushed Ningyu away and leaped out. In almost an instant, Jiyu Yang appeared in front of Ningyu, and his fist carried a violent Yuan Qi gale as it fiercely smashed towards Ningyu's chest. Jiyu Yang, what are you doing? Seeing Jiyu Yang suddenly attack Ningyu with all his strength, Shirong was very angry. To be honest, Shirong was very angry that Jiyu Yang attacked Ningyu. Previously, Jiyu Yang didn't allow him to fight with Ningyu. Now, he even wanted to get involved. Did he really think that he wasn't a match for Ningyu? I will explain to you later. Stay where you are and don't go anywhere. Although Jiyu Yang's words were directed at Shirong, he didn't slow down at all. Instead, he sped up. You'd better give me a reasonable explanation. Shirong was so angry that his nose was crooked. The more anxious Jiyu Yang was, the more he looked down on him. Shirong had a very big characteristic. The more others looked down on him, the more he wanted to prove himself. In this case, the best way was to control Ningyu, whose cultivation was higher than Ningyu's. Therefore, Shirong slowly moved toward Ningyu's side. Ningyu, I already knew you had a problem. Show me your trump card, or you won't have a chance. Although it seemed that Jiyu Yang had an absolute advantage. However, even a lion would use all its strength to catch a rabbit, not to mention a mysterious person like Ningyu. As you wish. Looking at Jiyu Yang, who was only a few feet away from him, Ningyu's mouth curled up into a smile again. Then, he tore open the void and entered it. Humph. You still want to escape in front of me? I think you have lost your mind. Upon seeing Ning Yu disappear into thin air, Jiyu Yang coldly snorted. Then, he viciously threw a punch in the direction Ning Yu had disappeared. Rumble. The next moment, an earth-shattering sound rang out. The space in the entire area became restless. Crack, crack. The sound of the space breaking kept ringing out. It's over. Far away, Yunmu's mouth was wide open and his face was filled with disappointment. In Yunmu's opinion, Ning Yu would definitely die. Even Ziyun might not be able to withstand Jiyu Yang's all-out attack, not to mention Ning Yu. Let's wait and see. Although Tianji Laoren's face was grave, he still had a trace of hope. Because Tianji Laoren knew that Ning Yu would never do something he wasn't confident in. Tianji Laoren believed that Ning Yu definitely had a backup plan. In my opinion, we'd better leave as soon as possible while that Danyang isn't paying attention to us. At this moment, Yunmu even had the thought of leaving. Although the current situation wasn't very clear, it wasn't much different. Unless that Qilin on Ning Yu. That's right, Qilin. Thinking of this, Yunmu's heart was filled with hope again. Don't think too much. The Qilin on Ning Yu's body is only at the initial sage realm. Tianji Laoren seemed to have guessed Yunmu's thoughts. He shook his head and said, an initial sage realm Qilin can only withstand one attack from Jiyu Yang. It definitely won't be able to withstand the second attack. Poochie. As if to prove Tianji Laoren's words, the aftermath of the explosion in the distance suddenly dissipated. A Qilin stood where Ning Yu had been, and there was even a drop of blood hanging from the corner of its mouth. Chapter 1800. Elder Tianji, since Qilin isn't Jiyu Yang's match, why don't we leave? Yunmu couldn't understand. Qilin wasn't Jiyu Yang's match, and Ning Yu was only an intermediate heavenly supreme. Under such circumstances, staying here was no different from sending them to their deaths. I have to tell you the truth. Elder Tianji took a deep breath and explained, with our current strength, we can't leave. This, Yunmu was slightly stunned by Elder Tianji's explanation, but he immediately understood. It wasn't that Elder Tianji didn't want to leave, but that he couldn't. Jiyu Yang was a late saint, and his combat strength was extremely terrifying. Unless someone completely stopped him, no one would be able to leave. I knew you had a trump card, but I didn't expect it to be Qilin. Jiyu Yang looked at Ning Yu with a slightly relieved expression and said, fortunately, this Qilin is only at the early stage of the Sage Realm. If he was at the middle stage of the Sage Realm, I really wouldn't be his match. You think you can defeat me? The little Qilin licked the blood at the corner of its mouth and said in a deep voice, Dan Kai is a Dan Kai. Even if you're a late saint, you still have a fatal weakness. That's right. Dan Kai does have a fatal weakness, but with your current strength, you can't defeat me even if you know my weakness. Jiyu Yang curled his lips and revealed a disdainful expression. The ignorant are fearless. At this moment, Ning Yu, who was on the little Qilin's back, spoke. The corner of Ning Yu's mouth rose and he smiled sinisterly. If you're not convinced, you can continue to attack. Does he still have a trump card? Jiyu Yang secretly became cautious. Without absolute confidence, Jiyu Yang wouldn't continue to attack. His punch was blocked by the Qilin on Ning Yu's back. Who knew if a stronger demonic beast would come out to block the next attack for Ning Yu? For safety's sake, Jiyu Yang decided to wait and see. He would use Ning Lu to threaten Ning Yu. Thinking of this, Jiyu Yang leaped up and quickly flew in the direction of Ning Lu. Swish. However, Jiyu Yang suddenly stopped after flying for a short while. Ka. Jiyu Yang clenched his fists tightly as he stared at the two figures not far away. You really infuriate me. Due to his anger, the veins on Jiyu Yang's body bulged. He was on the verge of exploding. The reason why Jiyu Yang would be so angry was because Shirong didn't listen to his advice and attacked Ning Lu without permission. It's fine that you made a move, but in the end, you actually failed to subdue Ning Lu and were subdued by Ning Yu. Impede. Now, Shirong had completely become a hindrance to Jiyu Yang. As long as Jiyu Yang dared to attack Ning Yu and little Kailin, then Ning Lu would definitely attack Shirong. You win. Ji Yang knew that since things had come to this, it was unrealistic for him to solve it by force. The only thing he could do now was to sacrifice some benefits and rescue Shirong. I can let you go, but the condition is that you have to get that child to release Shirong. Taking a deep breath, Ji Yang said to Ningyu, from now on, we will mind our own business. Do you think I'm an idiot? Ningyu pointed at his own nose and said, it's not impossible for me to release Shirong, but you have to mine the immortal crystal mine for me and exchange it for Shirong. Don't go too far. Ji Yang had never been bullied like this before. His chest heaved up and down, and he said angrily, if you push me too far, none of you will leave today. Ah! As soon as Ji Yang's voice fell, a scream like that of a pig being slaughtered came from afar. Without a doubt. The scream came from the early stage sage Shirong. Ninglu suddenly slapped Shirong's back with his right hand. At the same time, a dark golden branch quietly entered Shirong's body and madly absorbed the energy in Shirong's body. The energy in Shirong's body entered Ninglu's body through the dark golden branch. As the energy continued to increase, Ninglu's strength was slowly increasing. If I can devour him completely, I can even advance to the peak of Sky Supreme. Ninglu showed a satisfied expression. He first swallowed 2 elixirs and raised his cultivation from the middle stage Sky Supreme to the late stage Sky Supreme. Now he caught the early stage sage Shirong. If he could devour Shirong, he would have a high chance of advancing to the peak of Sky Supreme. Ninglu, a late stage Sky Supreme, could use the advantage of the World Tree to defeat Dan Ming, an early stage sage. One could imagine. Once he advanced to the peak of Sky Supreme, then he could use the advantage of the World Tree to defeat Dan Ming, an early stage sage. A virtuous cycle. This was a virtuous cycle that could continue to develop. Change the conditions. Ji Yang's face was so gloomy that he wanted to kill someone. A cold voice came from his mouth, as long as it's not the immortal crystal mine, everything else is negotiable. In fact, it wasn't that Ji Yang didn't want to mine the immortal crystal mine. It was that it took time to mine the immortal crystal mine. In the distance, Ninglu was devouring Shirong. With every minute he wasted, Shirong would be in more danger. Ji Yang wanted to save Shirong, but he also wanted to preserve Shirong's fighting strength. This is troublesome. Ningyu rested his chin on his hands and looked like he was thinking. After a while, Ningyu said, as a late-stage sage Dan Ming, you must have a lot of pure energy and pure soul power. How about this, as long as you take out pure energy and pure soul power to help little Kylin advance to the middle stage sage, let my soul power increase to the ninth stage. At the peak, I will ask Ninglu to release Shirong. You. Hearing Ningyu's conditions, Ji Yang almost died of anger. Ningyu's soul power was at the early stage sage. It was not particularly difficult for him to take out pure soul power to help him increase his soul power to the peak of 9th stage. What was difficult was to help that Kylin advance to the middle stage sage. Not to mention how much energy it would take to help an early stage Kylin advance to the middle stage sage. Even if he could help Kylin advance to the middle stage sage, the next step would not be easy. Because Ji Yang did not have absolute confidence that he could defeat a middle stage sage. Besides, there was still a late-stage sage warrior eyeing him covetously. Moreover, in front of the city lord's mansion of Four Corner City, there were 2 late-stage sage warriors fighting fiercely. It was better to be safe than sorry. If so many people joined forces, wouldn't he be dead meat? Let me change my conditions. Ji Yang resisted the urge to explode and said, I can give you enlightenment and let your cultivation increase from the middle stage Sky Supreme to the peak Sky Supreme. No way. Ningyu waved his hand and said loudly, I have given you 2 choices. Don't push your luck. Chapter 1801. Crack crack crack. Due to his anger, Ji Yang's bones made cracking sounds. Ever since he had descended to the celestial spirit realm, Ji Yang had never been so angry. He had hidden at the entrance of the celestial crystal vein with the intention of using his powerful strength to kill and devour all those who wanted a share of the loot. Originally, the plan was very successful. He had also successfully killed 2 late-stage sage warriors and devoured them both, increasing his strength a little. However, because of Shirong's stupidity, everything had turned around. Now, he was a fish on the chopping block while others were on the chopping block. Ah! Just as Jiyu Yang was pondering this, Shirong let out another hysterical roar in the distance. In just a minute, Shirong's aura was already on the verge of Sage and Sky Supreme. At this rate, Shirong's cultivation would drop to peak Sky Supreme in at most a minute. Okay, I'm willing to give you energy and soul power. Jiyu Yang gritted his teeth and said helplessly, but you have to make that kid stop devouring Shirong. Sorry, I choose to refuse. Ningyu shrugged, not planning to give Jiyu Yang any face. Stop devouring? What a joke. For a late-stage sage elixir puppet like Jiyu Yang, he could not give him any chance. Otherwise, if he approached Ninglu quickly and subdued him, all his previous efforts would be in vain. Therefore, the best solution was for Ninglu to continue devouring Shirong and force Jiyu Yang not to act rashly. Here you go. Jiyu Yang wanted to kill Ningyu immediately, but he knew that he could only choose to hand over the pure energy and soul power. Swoosh. Swoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiyu Yang flicked his wrist and 2 rays of cold light flew towards Ningyu and the little Kailin. Stop. Ningyu was not stupid enough to catch the pure energy and soul power directly. He pushed out his right hand and forced the 2 beams of cold light to stop in midair. Is there a problem? After forcing the cold light to stop, Ningyu turned to little Kailin and asked, can this energy help you advance to the mid-stage sage? Ningyu was concerned about 2 things. Was it safe? Could the energy allow little Kailin to advance to the middle stage of the Saint Realm? Safety was of utmost importance. If it wasn't safe, what was the point of having more energy? So, as long as little Kailin said that the energy wasn't safe, Ningyu would definitely retreat without a second thought. No problem. After observing for a while, the little Kailin nodded and said, this energy can help me advance to the mid-stage sage realm. Whoosh. Whoosh. Hearing little Chilene's affirmative reply, Ningyu revealed a relieved expression. Since it was confirmed that there was no problem, Ningyu did not argue anymore. He threw the energy to little Kailin. As for himself, he received the pure soul force. After obtaining the pure soul power, Ningyu swallowed it without any hesitation. The soul force flowed down Ningyu's throat and circulated in Ningyu's body before entering Ningyu's consciousness. In Ningyu's consciousness, the initial 9th grade soul force surged and crazily swallowed the pure soul power. As expected of a late-stage sage elixir puppet. As Ningyu swallowed the soul force, he thought to himself, if I can swallow Jiyu Yang, I wonder if my soul force can break through the limits of 9th grade and advance to the realm of a 10th grade elixir emperor. A 9th grade soul force was considered very strong in the immortal spirit realm. But Ningyu knew that as more and more experts descended from the higher planes, a 9th grade soul force was no longer enough. But Ningyu knew his limits. It was enough to raise his soul force to the peak of 9th grade today. As for the rest, there was no need to rush. Bang bang. While Ningyu was swallowing the pure soul power, on the other side, the little Chilene's body was making banging sounds. Moreover, the aura of the little Chiline was growing at a visible speed. Originally, the little Chilene's cultivation was at the peak of the early stage sage, not too far from the mid-stage sage. Now that it had so much pure energy and Ningyu had secretly given it a small piece of immortal ascension grass, its strength was improving rapidly. It can't go on like this. It won't be long before this Chiline advances to the mid-stage sage. Jiyu Yang had been paying attention to the changes in the little Chiline. As for Ningyu, Jiyu Yang didn't want to pay too much attention to him. After all, even if Ningyu's soul force increased to the peak of 9th grade, his strength wouldn't increase by much. Once the little Chilene's cultivation reached the mid-stage sage, he would be facing a huge disaster. With a thought, Jiyu Yang turned his attention to Ziyun. How about we make a deal? Jiyu Yang didn't beat around the bush. The first thing he said was to cooperate with Ziyun. If you rescue Shirong for me, I'll give you all the celestial crystals in the celestial crystal mineral vein. Whoosh. It had to be said that Jiyu Yang's words were very tempting to Ziyun. Ziyun was very tempted by the celestial crystals in the celestial crystal mineral vein, because as Ningyu and the little Chilene's strength increased, Ziyun's uneasiness became more and more serious. She could still get 50% of the celestial crystals now. When the little Chelene advances to the mid-stage sage, would she still get 50%? If Ningyu went back on his words, she wouldn't even get 10% of the celestial crystals. But Ziyun wasn't a reckless person. Although it was dangerous to cooperate with Ningyu, she knew Ningyu better than Jiyu Yang. At least, she knew him better than Jiyu Yang. If she cooperated with Jiyu Yang, she might be walking into a tiger's mouth. I won't do it without benefits. Ziyun went straight to the point. Unless you give me a large amount of pure energy, or a large amount of pure spiritual force, I will not take the risk to save Shirong for you. I've handed the energy and soul force to Ningyu. I don't have any energy or soul force with me right now. Jiyu Yang shook his head. But you don't have to worry. I'll make a heavenly oath. As long as you can rescue Shirong, I guarantee that I'll give you a large amount of energy and soul force. Getting something without risking anything. Ziyun curled her lips and didn't speak anymore. She originally thought that Jiyu Yang would pay a price, but in the end, he was trying to get something without risking anything. As for the heavenly oath, Ziyun didn't believe in it. Could Dan Kai's heavenly oath be trusted? I can tell you a secret. Jiyu Yang clenched his teeth and said, there's a teleportation array in the celestial crystal mineral vein that can teleport us to the Pill Emperor city. Ziyun was stunned. There's a teleportation array in the celestial crystal mineral vein? And it can teleport us to the Pill Emperor city? This news made Ziyun extremely shocked. Ziyun thought more about it. Chapter 1802. As long as you rescue Shirong, I'll give you the celestial crystal vein and tell you how to activate the teleportation formation inside the celestial crystal vein so that you can directly reach Alchemy Emperor City. Seeing Ziyun's hesitation, Jiyu Yang instantly felt that there was hope. He gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. Apart from these, I will also give you that Chelene. You're giving Chelene to me? How? Ziyun would not easily believe Jiyu Yang's words. Although that Chelene was now at the early stage of the Sage Realm, who knew when it would advance to the middle stage of the Sage Realm? Once that Chelene advanced to the Sage Intermediate stage, everything would be set in stone. After all, a mid-stage Sage Chelene could easily defeat a late-stage Sage Dan Kai. Help me save Shirong, and I'll immediately make a move against Chelene and capture him with lightning speed. Jiyu Yang said slowly, think about it. You are now at the late stage of the Sage Realm. If you can control a Kailin at the early stage of the Sage Realm, will you still be afraid that I will turn against you? You've said so much, but there's nothing practical at all. You still want to gain something without risking anything. Ziyun shook her head and said, if your sincerity is only this much, then I can only apologize to you. What on earth do you want? Seeing that Ziyun didn't fall for it, Jiyu Yang finally couldn't endure it any longer and coldly said, I can't give you energy and soul force right now. The only sincerity I can show is to tell you that there's a teleportation array in the immortal crystal vein. Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound came from afar. Hearing this sound, Jiyu Yang's pupils shrank and his body couldn't help but tremble. The speed at which the little Kailin absorbed the pure energy was far beyond Jiyu Yang's estimation. In Jiyu Yang's opinion, no matter how fast the small Kailin could absorb energy, it would take 10 minutes or even half an hour for it to reach the middle stage of Sage Realm. However, after seeing the little Kailin's condition, Jiyu Yang knew that he was wrong. At this rate, it would take at most 5 minutes for the little Kailin to break through its limit and advance to the middle stage of the Saint Realm. I can promise you 3 things unconditionally. In desperation, Jiyu Yang had to compromise. It could be seen that Jiyu Yang valued Shirong very much. He would never allow Shirong to make any mistakes. Promise me 3 things unconditionally. Hearing Jiyu Yang's words, Ziyun was stunned. Ziyun thought that Jiyu Yang would take a step back, but she never imagined that Jiyu Yang would make such a huge concession. By agreeing to 3 things unconditionally, Jiyu Yang basically put his life in her hands. Would Jiyu Yang be so stupid? The answer was obviously no. I can open my mind and let you leave a trace of your soul power in my sea of consciousness. While Jiyu Yang was paying attention to the little Chelene's aura, he said to Ziyun, as long as you leave your soul force in my sea of consciousness, won't I be at your mercy? All right, I'll pretend to attack you first, and then leave my soul force in your sea of consciousness. Ziyun seemed to have made up her mind as she heavily nodded her head. Shortly after, her figure flashed as she charged towards Jiyu Yang. In order to not arouse the suspicions of Ningyu and the old man of heavenly secrets, Ziyun shouted as they advanced. Jiyu Yang, how dare you sneak attack me, Huala? Ziyun's words immediately attracted the attention of Old Prophet and the rest. Apart from Tianji Laoren, Yun Mu, and the others, even Ning Lu was slightly attracted. Rumble. As the saying goes, if you want to put on a show, you must go all the way. Ziyun waved her hands continuously and displayed her trump card. At this moment, the battle strength that Ziyun displayed was comparable to that of a late-stage sage martial artist. Ziyun's strength is actually so powerful. Not far away, Ninglu's face turned solemn as he murmured, in terms of pure battle strength, and Haoping is not a match for Ziyun. In this delicate situation, if she attacks Jiyu Yang, it might be. No. However, before Ninglu could finish his murmur, his expression changed greatly. He thought of a possibility, an extremely terrifying possibility. Ziyun might have reached some kind of agreement with Jiyu Yang. The more Ninglu thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. However, Ninglu could only be anxious at this moment. Because no matter how he tried to contact Ningyu, he couldn't get in touch with him. Ningyu was in an ethereal state as he was devouring the pure soul power. At this moment, unless Ningyu broke through his limit and completed the transformation of his soul power, Ninglu would definitely not be able to contact him. Since he couldn't get in touch with Ningyu, Ninglu changed his strategy and tried to contact the little Kailin. However, the result was not satisfactory. The little Kailin's condition was not much different from that of Ningyu. It could be seen that the little Kailin had made a lot of preparations in order to break through to the intermediate stage sage realm. Ninglu didn't look very good as he couldn't get in touch with Ningyu or the little Kailin. If his guess was correct, the consequences would be unimaginable. And Haoping. Oh, right. Contact An Haoping and ask him to come here. Ninglu had no choice but to try to get in touch with An Haoping, who was fighting with Jin Fei. If An Haoping came, Jin Fei would also come. However, Ninglu had no other choice in the current situation. It was better to be safe than sorry. If Ziyun really joined forces with Jiyu Yang, then they would all die here today. Ninglu was still very anxious even though he had contacted An Haoping. If they dare to join forces, I will be the first to kill Shirong. Ninglu turned his head to look at Shirong, who was being devoured by him. He increased the devouring power again and devoured Shirong even more crazily. Puff. Shirong, who was originally in a weakened state, naturally couldn't face such a powerful devouring power. Fresh blood spurted out from Shirong's mouth. His face turned deathly pale, without any color. Go in. Everything that happened here naturally fell into Jiyu Yang's eyes. However, Jiyu Yang could only pretend that he didn't see it because he was in the middle of a transaction with Ziyun. He opened up his mind and let Ziyun's soul force enter his sea of consciousness. Relatively speaking, this was the most important thing. There couldn't be any slightest mistake. All of you, go over. Jiyu Yang looked very calm on the surface, but in reality, he was extremely nervous in his heart. He mobilized all the soul force in his body and hid it all around his sea of consciousness. As long as Ziyun's soul force entered his sea of consciousness, he would mobilize his own soul force and prepare to give Ziyun a ruthless blow. Of course, Jiyu Yang wouldn't be so foolish to make a move now. At the very least, he had to wait until Ziyun rescued Shirong. At that time, he would execute a secret technique and use the soul force that Ziyun left in his mind to control Ziyun and force Ziyun to hand over Shirong. The technique that Jiyu Yang grasped was actually not much different from the one that Ningyu grasped. Ningyu grasped the soul attraction technique. He could use soul force to attack a martial artist's body from a distance. However, the soul attraction technique had a lot of restrictions. There were many things that needed to be prepared. Chapter 1803. Huff. After injecting her soul force into Jiyu Yang's sea of consciousness, Ziyun couldn't help letting out a long breath. Originally, Ziyun thought that Jiyu Yang wouldn't let her leave her soul force in his sea of consciousness so easily and that it would definitely take some time. However, Jiyu Yang's reaction was out of her expectations. No matter what, she had Jiyu Yang's weakness in her hands. Even if Jiyu Yang was prepared, he was still bound to be restricted by her. Rumble. Start from the beginning. While Jiyu Yang and Ziyun were discussing, they were still attacking with all their might. On the surface, their attacks seemed to be very powerful. Even Tianji Laoren and Yun Mu were fooled and thought that Ziyun had changed. Boom. At that critical moment, Jiyu Yang grabbed onto a flaw in Ziyun's defense and abruptly threw out a punch. His punch landed right on Ziyun's back. A huge force came from her back, causing Ziyun to stagger and fly into the distance. Without a doubt, the direction where Ziyun flew out was where Ninglu and Shirong were. Shit. Not far away, Tianji Laoren's face changed when he saw the direction where Ziyun flew out. He felt that something was wrong. What's going on? Yun Mu was still frowning. He didn't find anything wrong. Ziyun might have joined hands with Jiyu Yang. We have to get Ninglu to move as soon as possible. Tianji Laoren's face was extremely grave as he coldly said, "Stay where you are and don't move. I'll think of a way to stop Ziyun." "Are you sure you're not joking?" Hearing Tianji Laoren's words and seeing the determination on Tianji Laoren's face, Yun Mu's mouth was slightly opened and his face was filled with confusion. "Let's not talk about whether they joined hands or not. Even if they did, you wouldn't be able to help. Fool. I already said that I'm going to think of a way and not take the initiative to attack Ziyun." Tianji Laoren fiercely stared at Yun Mu, then his figure flashed and flew in another direction. Initially, Yun Mu was a little puzzled when he saw Tianji Laoren's actions. He didn't know why Tianji Laoren was going in the opposite direction from Ziyun. But soon, Yun Mu understood Tianji Laoren's thoughts. If Ziyun really joined forces with Jiyu Yang, then her original intention must be for the immortal crystals in the immortal crystal vein. If Old Man Tianji could take action and gain control of the immortal crystal vein, Ziyun would definitely not dare to make a move against Ninglu. You don't have to blindly participate in this. There was always a gap between ideals and reality. And this chasm was something that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets could not bridge. At the very least, with his current strength, he could not bridge it. Now that they had shed all pretenses of cordiality and confirmed that the little Kailin and Ning Yu were at the critical stage of their breakthrough, Jiyu Yang could show his foxtail without any scruples. Jiyu Yang flicked his sleeves and a cold light flew out, flinging Tianji Laoren back. Meanwhile, Jiyu Yang shifted his gaze to Ninglu and Shirong. A cold expression appeared on his face. Fortunately, there's an idiot who's willing to help. Jiyu Yang felt lucky. If he made a move himself, Ninglu would definitely not say a word and directly kill Shirong. Ziyun was different. If Ziyun made a move, Ninglu wouldn't kill Shirong with lightning speed. As long as Shirong was fine, he could slowly deal with Ziyun and the rest. Naturally, Jiyu Yang had his own plans. He could put Ziyun aside for now. Most importantly, he had to capture the little Kailin and Ning Yu. Comparatively speaking, Ning Yu and the little Kailin were the biggest variables, and they were the ones that Jiyu Yang was worried about. No matter how strong Ziyun was, she wouldn't be able to escape from his palm. "Do you really want to do this?" Looking at Ziyun, who was constantly approaching him, Ninglu grabbed Shirong and quickly retreated. "I have no other choice." Ziyun's expression was indifferent. No one could tell if she was happy or angry. "You have to think of the consequences." Ninglu clenched his teeth and continued, "When I'm pushed to the limit, I will immediately kill Shirong." "Kill Shirong? It's best that you kill him. That way, it'll be better for everyone." The corner of Ziyun's lips rose as she coldly said, "I'll tell you the truth. The reason why I joined forces with Jiyu Yang was to let you kill Shirong. Why do you have to do this?" Ninglu's face was cold, so dark that it was terrifying. Ninglu couldn't understand what benefit Ziyun would get if Shirong was killed. "Why do you have to do this? I'm afraid that you've lost your mind, right?" Facing Ninglu's question, Ziyun did not directly explain. Instead, she asked, Who doesn't want to monopolize the immortal crystals in the immortal crystal vein? Do you think that I want to share it with you? Don't be naive. If you kill Shirong, Jiyu Yang will fight you with his life. At that time, when two tigers fight, one will definitely be injured. I can just sit on the mountain and watch them fight. How ruthless. Ninglu's heart skipped a beat. It was said that a woman's heart was the most vicious. However, Ninglu was shocked that Ziyun, who usually didn't speak much, could be so vicious. But being shocked was just being shocked. Ninglu knew that he couldn't fall for Ziyun's trick. Kill Shirong? At least, before the little Kailin reached the intermediate saint realm, he absolutely couldn't do that. Otherwise, they would be in a situation of no return. Jiyu Yang, if you continue like this, don't blame me for being impolite. Although he didn't dare to kill Shirong, it wouldn't be a problem to use Shirong to threaten Jiyu Yang. After all, judging from Ziyun's attitude, she wanted to use him to kill Shirong. This situation gave Ninglu the capital to resist. Ziyun, what the hell are you doing? With the distance between you and Shirong, you can easily save him. Ninglu's words naturally fell into Jiyu Yang's ears. Jiyu Yang had no choice but to transmit his voice to Ziyun. Don't forget about our deal. Don't worry. Since I promised you, I will definitely help you save Shirong. Ziyun rolled her eyes and transmitted her voice as well. Ninglu's cultivation is in the late heavenly supreme realm. He's extremely powerful. I'm afraid that if I act rashly, I will arouse his resentment. At that time, it won't be worth it if I kill Shirong. I don't care. You have to save Shirong within a minute. Jiyu Yang was on the verge of exploding. Inviting a wolf into the house. He originally thought that Ziyun's intervention could make things simpler. Who knew that it would become more and more complicated? Now, it seemed that Ziyun wasn't a fool. Offending Ningyu now was the most unwise choice. Therefore, Ziyun decided to confront Ninglu first. If she could force Ninglu to kill Shirong, everything would be fine. But if Ninglu didn't fall for it, it wouldn't be a loss to her. At worst, she could turn to Ningyu and fight Jiyu Yang together with Ningyu. Boom. While the three parties were in a deadlock, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly resounded. Hearing the explosion, everyone shifted their gazes and looked in that direction. Hiss. Chapter 1804. Boom. Along with the earth-shattering sound, a terrifying aura soared into the sky. Middle stage Sage Realm. At this moment, the little Kailin's cultivation had reached the middle stage Sage Realm. If it had only reached the middle stage Sage Realm, Ziyun and the rest wouldn't be so shocked. What shocked them, what made them suck in a cold breath, was the aura that the little Chiline displayed. It was infinitely close to the peak of the Sage Realm. With the cultivation of middle stage Sage Realm, its aura was infinitely close to the peak of the Sage Realm. Such an incredible thing could only happen to an ancient divine beast. Bang! As soon as the little Kailin's aura stabilized, Ningyu, who was next to it, poured out his soul power and formed a soul protection shield around him. Peak Grade 9. After devouring the pure soul power provided by Jiyu Yang, the strength of Ningyu's soul power directly increased from initial Grade 9 to Peak Grade 9. Of course, the strength of Ningyu's soul power had only reached the stage of liquefying qi. There was still a long way to go before he could liquefy Dan. However, it was not easy to increase the strength of his soul power to liquefy qi at this age. It was conceivable that when Ningyu's age was the same as before his rebirth, his soul power would at least be able to break through the Dan Emperor realm, or even reach Grade 10 Pill Emperor realm. Hurry up and save Jiyu Yang, or I'll teach you a lesson. The improvement of Ningyu's soul power did not make Jiyu Yang too anxious, but the advancement of the little Kailin to the middle stage Sage Realm made Jiyu Yang panic. Jiyu Yang knew that with his current mental state, he was definitely not a match for the little Kailin. The only thing he could do now was to let Ziyun save Shirong as soon as possible, and then he could use his secret technique to leave. Otherwise, he would definitely die here today. In order to save Shirong, Jiyu Yang used his secret technique to control Ziyun's soul power. Puff. Just when Jiyu Yang was controlling his soul power, Ziyun spurted out a mouthful of blood. Her face was filled with confusion. Ziyun knew that Jiyu Yang had a trump card, but she did not expect it to be so terrifying. Come back. In desperation, Ziyun continuously used her secret technique to retrieve the soul power in Jiyu Yang's sea of consciousness. Unfortunately, no matter how hard she tried, she could not retrieve her soul power. Puff, puff, poochie. Since she couldn't retract her soul force, Ziyun could only forcefully confront Jiyu Yang. However, Jiyu Yang held the absolute advantage. Therefore, Ziyun could only retreat step by step as she vomited blood. I'll give you one last chance. Save Sharong in 3 seconds, or I'll kill you. Seeing the little Kailin, who was about to consolidate its cultivation, Jiyu Yang shouted immediately, "Think about what you should do." "Sorry, I don't want to do that either." The feeling of having her life in someone else's hands made Ziyun feel terrible. But under the current situation, Ziyun had no choice but to follow Jiyu Yang's instructions. Otherwise, after Sharong was killed, she would definitely be killed as well. Jiyu Yang used your soul power to control you. Ning Lu pulled Sharong behind him and lightly said to Ziyun, "I can sever the connection between you and that soul force." "Is that true?" Ziyun was startled as she asked. 3. Seeing Ziyun and Ning Lu conversing, Jiyu Yang immediately said, 2. You can choose not to believe me, or you can take a gamble. Ning Lu shrugged his shoulders, looking indifferent. Although Ning Lu appeared to be calm, he was extremely nervous in his heart. The little Kailin was still consolidating its cultivation and was unable to kill Jiyu Yang in a short period of time. Under this situation, no one would help him. He could only rely on himself to think of a way. "Okay, I'll bet." Ziyun was not an indecisive person. She immediately made her decision to take a gamble. 1. Just when Ziyun announced to take a gamble, Jiyu Yang had already counted to 1. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit, the furious Jiyu Yang detonated a portion of Ziyun's soul force in his sea of consciousness, wanting to teach Ziyun a lesson. Go. Seeing Jiyu Yang's action, Ning Lu flicked his sleeve and a dark golden branch appeared. The dark golden branch gradually expanded above Ziyun's head and in the end, enveloped Ziyun entirely. Crack, crack, crack. Just when the dark golden branch enveloped Ziyun, it suffered a terrifying attack. Without a doubt, those attacks were initially targeted at Ziyun, but they were all blocked by the dark golden branch. Damn it, it won't cost me 2 dark golden branches, right? Ning Lu couldn't help cursing when he saw the dark golden branch on the verge of breaking. Every dark golden branch was extremely important to Ning Lu. The World Trees branch was practically omnipotent. Right now, Ning Lu's cultivation was only at the late phase Heavenly Supreme Realm. If his cultivation reached the late phase Saint Realm, or even the pinnacle Saint Realm, then his dark golden branch's effect should be comparable to the immortal Ascension Grass. Go. Although he felt helpless, Ning Lu was someone who would do what he said. No, he was a world tree that would do what he said. He once again threw out a dark golden branch, enveloping Ziyun within it. Burn all of them. Jiyu Yang's nose was crooked from anger. He continuously executed a secret technique, detonating all of Ziyun's soul force in his sea of consciousness. Crack, crack, crack. The dark golden branch that was protecting Ziyun let out another cracking sound. Ning Lu was completely dumbfounded. He couldn't help but look at Ziyun with a puzzled expression. How much soul force did you leave in Jiyu Yang's sea of consciousness? Ning Lu felt that he should ask clearly. Otherwise, all 5 of his dark golden branches would be consumed if he dragged on like this. After all, his strength would drop by at least half after losing 5 dark golden branches. Ning Lu wasn't that stupid to let his strength drop by half for Ziyun. There's still a little left. Not much left. Ziyun bit her lips, her face full of unwillingness. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. After the incident in Four Corner City, Ziyun finally understood a truth. There was always someone better than you. Some things couldn't be solved by strength alone. You also needed schemes. When she was in the Purple Sun Empire, Ziyun almost didn't care about the outside world and only focused on cultivation. Although her cultivation had reached the middle phase of the Saint Realm, she had fallen behind a lot in terms of worldly wisdom. Damn it. I'll help her to the end. Ning Lu cursed inwardly. Then, He forced out another dark golden branch and threw it at Ziyun's head. Crack, crack. Just when Ninglu stretched out the third branch, the first branch couldn't hold on any longer and was shattered by the powerful attack. I don't believe it. The furious Ninglu displayed the fourth dark golden branch. Aside from the first dark golden branch that had shattered, there were a total of 3 dark golden branches that shrouded Ziyun's head. The 3 dark golden branches blocked Jiyu Yang's attack. Damn it. Let's fight. Seeing that he couldn't hurt Ziyun, Jiyu Yang decided to fight. He stomped on the ground and rushed toward Ninglu. Chapter 1805. If you dare to take another step forward, I promise to kill Shirong. Seeing Jiyu Yang rushing towards him, Ninglu dragged Shirong out again and said in a cold voice, I'm a man of my words. I won't go back on my words. I don't believe that you dare to kill. If you kill Shirong, you have to die today too. Since he made a decision, Jiyu Yang absolutely would not change it. He calculated that Ninglu did not dare to really kill Shirong, so he raised his speed to the limit, planning to kill Ninglu first and save Shirong before talking. Originally, Jiyu Yang would not take the risk out of desperation. After all, Shirong's safety was of the utmost importance, even more important than his own life. But over there, little Chelin was about to completely consolidate its cultivation. He could only choose to gamble. Actually, Jiyu Yang chose to gamble because he had another consideration. Ninglu definitely wanted to live. And under this kind of situation, Ninglu had a very high possibility of throwing Shirong to the other side, and then escape by himself. As long as Ninglu made this choice, he could bring Shirong and cast a secret art to leave. Even if Ninglu had a contingency plan on Shirong, Jiyu Yang was not afraid either. Alright, you win. I indeed don't dare to kill Shirong. Ninglu's right hand suddenly slapped on Shirong's back, revealing a pained appearance at the same time. Lifting his right leg, Ninglu suddenly exerted force, kicking Shirong towards another direction. I'm going to kill him. Originally, seeing Ninglu kick out Shirong, Jiyu Yang was very happy. But when Jiyu Yang saw the direction Shirong flew towards, his entire person became terrible. 4 directions, the direction Shirong flew towards just happened to be the direction where little Chelin and Ningyu were. I'll find you to settle the score later. Jiyu Yang glared at Ninglu fiercely, then immediately turned his head and charged towards Shirong. In the process of advancing, Jiyu Yang constantly prayed that little Chelin had not consolidated its cultivation yet. If the cultivation had not been completely consolidated, little Chelin's combat power would be very limited. At most, it could only be on par with him. Once little Chelin's cultivation stabilized, then even he would not be its match. Hence, Jiyu Yang's current attention shifted from Ninglu to little Chelin. Let's go. At this time, little Chelin's eyes suddenly opened and its 4 hooves stomped on the ground as it carried Ningyu and sprinted towards Ninglu. Who? After little Kailin and Ningyu left, Jiyu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. Jiyu Yang increased his speed again, grabbed Shirong, and then forcibly tore open the void and entered. Rumble. There was always a fine line between ideals and reality. As soon as Jiyu Yang grabbed Shirong and entered the void, he quickly threw Shirong out. Shirong drew an arc in midair. Then, his body rapidly expanded, and with a boom, he exploded. Ah! Shirong's explosion made Jiyu Yang's face look extremely ferocious. I'll kill you all. Jiyu Yang clenched his fists. Due to his anger, Jiyu Yang became violent. The combat power that a berserk late-stage Sage Dan puppet could unleash was absolutely astonishing. Kill. Jiyu Yang's body quickly swept out. His first target was Ninglu. Jiyu Yang was not a fool. He naturally knew why Shirong had self-destructed. If Ninglu hadn't done something, how could Shirong have self-detonated? What bad luck. All 5 dark golden branches have been wasted. Shirong's self-detonation did not make Ninglu excited. On the contrary, it made him furious. He had given 4 dark golden branches to Ziyun, and now, 2 of them had already been destroyed. Furthermore, judging from the situation, the remaining 2 wouldn't last long. The dark golden branch that was inserted into Shirong's back had also been destroyed by Shirong's self-detonation. The destruction of the 5 dark golden branches was a huge blow to Ninglu. If you want to kill Ninglu, you'll have to go through me. The little Chileen first put down Ningyu, who was on its back, and its figure flickered, blocking Jiyu Yang's path. If God obstructs me, I'll kill God. If Buddha obstructs me, I'll kill Buddha. Jiyu Yang's mind was already muddled by anger. He didn't care if it was the little Chileen in front of him or not. Boom. At this moment, the late-stage sage Jiyu Yang and the little Chileen started fighting. Are you alright? On the other side, Ningyu landed beside Ninglu and asked out of concern, why do you look so disappointed? If it were you, you would be even more disappointed than me. Rolling his eyes at Ningyu, Ninglu continued, I'm worried that the little Chileen isn't Jiyu Yang's match. What are you worried about? You don't have to worry about it. Ningyu waved his hand and interrupted Ninglu's words. Actually, the little Chileen has already consolidated its cultivation. The reason why it hasn't made a move against Jiyu Yang is because it's observing the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein. Observing the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein? Ninglu was puzzled. He had no idea what Ningyu was talking about. Nodding his head, Ningyu explained, in the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein, there's a teleportation array. In that instant, the little Chileen noticed that the teleportation array was about to be activated. According to the aura coming from the teleportation array, there will definitely be a Sage Realm cultivator descending once the teleportation array is activated. Before we know if the other party is a friend or foe, we have to be careful. Hearing Ningyu's explanation, Ninglu's face turned grave. A teleportation array located in the immortal crystal vein was definitely not simple. Although he didn't know where the teleportation array would lead to, it wouldn't be wrong to be careful. How do you intend to deal with Ziyun's matter? Retracting his thoughts, Ninglu turned around and pointed at Ziyun. She was trying to take advantage of the chaos to rob us. I feel that we should deal with her and devour her. If you want to devour, go ahead. Why are you asking me? Ningyu couldn't be bothered with Ninglu. If Ninglu really wanted to devour Ziyun, he wouldn't have used up 4 dark golden branches to help Ziyun. Now that all the dark golden branches were used up, his strength would definitely drop. Ninglu chuckled, as if his scheme had succeeded. Hehe, let's make an agreement first. I owe you a favor this time. You better not ask about Ziyun's matter. I'm not interested. I just want to ask if Ziyun is stronger than Lu Wei. Ningyu asked without batting an eyelid. It's not the same. The purple spiritual body and the void spiritual body have their own advantages. Ninglu didn't know that Ningyu was trying to get information from him, so he continued, comparatively speaking, I'm more inclined towards the void spiritual body. Because not only does the void spiritual body have a shocking cultivation speed, the cultivation speed around her is also shocking. But one thing was certain, and that was that there could only be one person by her side. If there's an additional person, the effect will be reduced by half. What the F***ck? Ningyu cursed. No wonder Ninglu didn't want him to ask about Ziyun's matter. So that brat already had a plan. Since Ninglu said this, it meant that he was already prepared. Who knows, he might have already done something to the dark golden branches and secretly controlled Ziyun. Chapter 1806. You can't keep it to yourself. Ningyu looked at Ninglu and said, you have to listen to Ziyun's opinion on who she wants to be with. You can't decide for her. This is bad. Hearing Ningyu's words, Ninglu knew that he had a slip of the tongue. However, Ninglu's acting skills were superb. He slightly knitted his brows and asked, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain it to me? Don't play dumb with me. Cultivating beside the ethereal physique will allow you to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, you're a late Heavenly Supreme, and I'm only a mid-Heavenly Supreme. Wait until I reach the mid-Heavenly Supreme, then I'll give Ziyun to you. Ziyun has her own thoughts. If she wants to stay by my side, then there's nothing I can do. Ninglu shrugged, expressing his helplessness. Poochie. At this moment, Ziyun, who was far away, vomited a mouthful of blood and became extremely weak. What did you do to me? Feeling the changes in her body, Ziyun's face changed. She couldn't help reprimanding Ninglu. I advise you to take back the thing in my body. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. I'm sorry. I'm good looking, so I don't need your help. Ninglu bashfully smiled and said, go to the other side and hide. I'll explain it to you after the little Chelin deals with Jiyu Yang. Clearly, Ziyun wasn't convinced by Ninglu's words. With a cold snort, she began to walk towards Ningyu. Rustle. Seeing Ziyun walking towards Ningyu, Ninglu's face turned ugly. He immediately moved to block Ziyun's path. Ninglu's face turned ugly and he coldly said, I saved you from Jiyu Yang. I'm already being merciful by not asking you to express your gratitude. How dare you give me such an expression? Go, go, go. Stay in the corner. Ningyu pushed Ninglu and said, others don't believe you, but you insist on sticking your warm face to a cold butt. Who are you calling a cold butt? Ningyu was just halfway through his thought when he shivered. Ziyun furiously glared at Ningyu, wishing that she could skin Ningyu alive. I'm not targeting you. Ningyu spread his hands and said helplessly, I just want to know, do you know about your physique? What do you mean? Ziyun had no idea what Ningyu was asking and felt puzzled. Don't ask. She doesn't know that she has an empty spirit body. Ninglu immediately interrupted Ningyu, afraid that Ningyu would spill the beans. In Ninglu's heart, no matter what, he had to make Ziyun stay. Furthermore, he had to make sure that Ziyun was perfectly fine. Because only by staying by her side and cultivating would he be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. For example, Lu Wei's violet spiritual body and Ziyun's void spiritual body. This was a unique physique of the world. Without a certain amount of time, the person involved wouldn't even know about it. From Ziyun's reaction, Ninglu could basically confirm that she didn't know that he had the void spiritual physique. In other words, Ziyun's void spiritual physique had yet to awaken. Even without awakening the void spiritual physique, she was still able to reach the intermediate saint realm. How terrifying would her strength be? The more he thought about it, the more Ninglu felt that he couldn't let Ziyun awaken the void spiritual physique. At the very least, before he and Ningyu reached the saint realm, he couldn't let Ziyun awaken the void spiritual physique. Otherwise, with Ziyun's intermediate saint realm cultivation and the void spiritual physique, she might even be able to fight a Chelin in the intermediate saint realm. Fighting a Chelin, that kind of battle prowess had already reached a level that made others blush with shame. Nothing much, I just wanted to ask you what you're going to do next. Ningyu swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. What else can I do? Of course, I'm going to mine the immortal crystal vein. How ridiculous. Ziyun rolled her eyes at Ningyu and continued, I have no idea when the little Chelin will be able to defeat Jiyu Yang. Otherwise, with the little Chelin's help, we would be able to mine all the immortal crystals in the immortal crystal vein very quickly. If I were to do it myself now, I have no idea how long it would take. The little Chelin will definitely defeat Jiyu Yang. Let's see when you can mine all the immortal crystals in the immortal crystal vein. Ningyu joked, why don't you go and mine the immortal crystals in the immortal crystal vein while the little Chelin and Jiyu Yang are fighting? MHM? Ziyun frowned her brows. She had no idea what Ningyu was trying to do. It's still unknown if the little Chelin sword can defeat Jiyu Yang. Under such circumstances, Ningyu still asked her to mine the immortal crystal vein. Isn't he using her as free labor? It's fine if the little Chelin wins, but if the little Chelin loses, the outcome would be unimaginable. Why? Do you think that the little Chelin can't defeat Jiyu Yang? Ningyu raised his brows and said, Jiyu Yang is only a late-stage sage elixir puppet, while the little Chelin has already advanced to middle-stage sage. I believe I don't need to tell you who will win and who will lose. I can mine the immortal crystal vein, but I want 60% of the immortal crystals, Ziyun said. I said 50%, so it's 50%. There's no reason for you to change your mind at the last minute. Ningyu didn't want to argue with Ziyun, but thinking that 10% of the immortal crystals would be 100, Ningyu felt his heart ache. 100 immortal crystals, who knows how many Sky Sovereign Realm martial artists could be created. To Ningyu, every immortal crystal had its use. Different from the others, There was still the Supreme Palace in Giant Shield City. There were many martial artists in the Supreme Palace, so 100 immortal crystals wasn't enough to be distributed. There weren't even enough people on his side, so how could Ningyu give Ziyun 10% more immortal crystals? Rumble. At this moment, the battle in the sky had reached its most exciting moment. The little Chelin executed all sorts of powerful techniques, suppressing Jiyu Yang to the point where he could only dodge and couldn't retaliate. Normally, Jiyu Yang wouldn't be the little Chelin's opponent. But the current situation was more normal, so it was impossible for Jiyu Yang to make a comeback. As for how long Jiyu Yang could last, it depended on how many trump cards he had. If he had more trump cards, he could last longer. If he had fewer trump cards, he could last longer. In short, Jiyu Yang would lose without a doubt. 30%. Ningyu stretched out 3 fingers and said, I can only give you 30% of the immortal crystals in the vein. Don't go too far. Ziyun was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. At the start, there were 50% immortal crystals, but after a short exchange, there were only 30% left. According to the reserves of the immortal crystal vein, there were 500 immortal crystals with 50%, and only 300 immortal crystals with 30%. She only argued for a little, wanting to gain more advantages, but it ended up like this. The little Chelin is fighting with Jiyu Yang. Aren't you afraid that I'll capture you? Chapter 1807. Are you daydreaming? Ningyu looked at Ziyun and asked in puzzlement, if you could take me down, you would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Sigh. Shortly after, Ningyu sighed and said, giving you 30% of the immortal crystals is the biggest concession I can make after thinking about it. Although you reined in the horse in the nick of time, you nearly betrayed me with Jiyu Yang. You can't wash this off no matter how hard you try. The first part of Ningyu's words made Ziyun furious. But the second part made Ziyun speechless. She had indeed nearly betrayed Ningyu, and this was something that she couldn't wash off for the rest of her life. Not to mention that Ninglu had left something in her body, so she could only choose to compromise. Ziyun was clear about the current situation. If she compromised, Ningyu would give her 30% of the immortal crystals. If she didn't compromise, Ninglu would trigger the thing in her body and make her say goodbye to the world. With my own strength, I don't think I'll be able to mine the entire immortal crystal vein within a few hours. Ziyun took a deep breath and continued, in my opinion, we should let Old Man Tianji and Yun Mu enter the vein. After all, one more person means one more force. There's no need. Ningyu shook his head, indicating that he didn't need Old Man Tianji and Yun Mu's help. Ziyun was a little puzzled. Why didn't Ningyu let Old Man Tianji and Yun Mu help? Could it be that he had someone else in mind? One must know that an immortal crystal vein wasn't something that just anyone could mine. If a cultivator's cultivation was too low, even if they entered the cave, there was a possibility of them collapsing. That's because the pressure in the immortal crystal vein was extremely great, to a terrifying degree. Old Man Tianji, Yun Mu, the Talisman Venerable, and Zhao Guocheng weren't weak, so it wouldn't be a problem for them to mine the immortal crystal vein. Another free labor force. Ningyu pointed at the intense battle in the sky and said, if I've guessed correctly, Jiyu Yang can only last for 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, bang. When Ningyu uttered the word 1, a muffled sound rang out in the air. Shio. Along with the muffled sound, there was also a rapid air-piercing sound. Like a kite with a broken string, Jiyu Yang flew straight toward the entrance of the immortal crystal vein. Bang! Not long after, Jiyu Yang fell heavily at the entrance of the mine. He looked extremely weak. To kill or not to kill, the little Kailin chased after Jiyu Yang and raised its front paw, stepping on Jiyu Yang's head as it asked Ningyu. Let's keep him alive for now and let him mine the immortal crystal mine for us. Ningyu shook his head, signaling the little Kailin not to rush to kill Jiyu Yang. It would be a waste not to use free labor. Mining immortal crystal veins was not only a technical job, but also a physical one. He said, don't just focus on the Kailin. We really found a treasure this time. A treasure? Zhao Xing was very confused. He didn't know what Song Wu meant. A late-stage sage elixir puppet. The chubby late-stage sage was called Zhong Shuai. His eyes fell on Jiyu Yang and he became very excited. For them, they had to give the Kylin to the master. They couldn't keep it for themselves. At most, they could exchange it for some 10th grade elixirs from the master. However, a late-stage sage elixir puppet was different. Once they caught this late-stage sage elixir puppet, they could kill it on the spot and then devour it to improve their cultivation. Oh my god! It's really a late-stage sage elixir puppet. We're rich this time. Zhao Xing shifted his gaze. When he confirmed that Jiyu Yang was a elixir puppet, his expression was even more exaggerated than Zhong Shuai's. Zhong Shuai only became excited, but Zhao Xing directly jumped up. The four of you, split into 2 teams and deal with the Kylin and the elixir puppet. Remember, you have to capture them alive. Chapter 1808. Void Spiritual Physique. I never thought that I would encounter one here. Song Wu's eyes were glued to Ziyun without any concealment. Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai might not have realized that Ziyun had the void spiritual physique, but Song Wu knew. There was no other reason. Song Wu had once seen an void spiritual physique in a higher realm. The void spiritual physique that Song Wu had seen before was not only powerful, but it was also a VIP wherever it went. Because cultivating beside the void spiritual physique could yield twice the results with half the effort. Some cultivators who were on the verge of breaking through would even pay a huge price to ask the void spiritual physique for help. In view of such a situation, how could Song Wu not be excited when he saw an empty spiritual physique in a low-level world? Moreover, it was only at the sage intermediate stage. Song Wu had already thought it through. Since Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai didn't know that this mid-realm sage had the void spiritual physique, then he wouldn't say it out loud. Instead, he would think of a way to bring this void spiritual physique to a higher realm. What are you guys still standing there for? The more he thought about it, the more excited Song Wu became. However, when Song Wu saw that Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai didn't make a move and were looking at Ziyun in confusion, his face turned cold and he berated, "Do you guys want me to make a move?" Swish. Swish. Seeing Song Wu's anger, Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai instantly retracted their doubts and rushed out. Zhao Xing brought a mid-realm sage to deal with the little Chelin. As for Zhong Shuai, he brought another mid-realm sage to deal with Jiyu Yang. It's over. That guy must have found out that Ziyun has the void spiritual physique. Song Wu's actions made Ninglu's heart sink to the bottom. Originally, he thought that by controlling Ziyun, he could use her void spiritual physique to cultivate. Who would have thought that a group of powerful people would appear out of nowhere? Should we leave first? Ninglu wasn't an indecisive person. He knew that if he didn't make a decision, he would suffer. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and said, "It might be too late if we don't leave now. I'll get an Haoping to come back." Ningyu wasn't willing. He didn't want to leave just like that. Although the enemy was powerful, it wasn't impossible. The little Chelin could deal with Song Wu, and Haoping could deal with Zhao Xing, and Ziyun could deal with Zhong Shuai. As for the remaining 2 middle-stage sage experts, Ningyu decided to hand them over to Zhong Qiong, Tianji Laoren, and the others. Zhong Qiong was a mid-stage sage. In order to help him recover as soon as possible, Ningyu even gave him some immortal ascension grass. Under the powerful effect of the ascending immortal grass, Zhong Qiong had almost recovered. Although he might not be able to kill a sage middle-stage warrior, it would not be a big problem to stall one. Although the Elder of Heavenly Secrets appeared harmless on the surface and did not have much battle prowess, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not have much battle prowess. However, Ningyu knew that if even the peak saint of the Jin clan could not do anything to the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, it meant that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets definitely had a trump card. How could an old man who had a trump card and was well versed in the art of divination be killed so easily by a sage intermediate stage cultivator? Surrender, open your mind, and I can spare your life. Zhao Xing brought a warrior of the intermediate stage of the Saint Realm and floated in front of the small Kylin. He said coldly, "You should know that you won't be able to escape today. Why should I run? Just because of you stinky fish and shrimps." The small Kylin rolled its eyes and said disdainfully, "To deal with an idiot like you, I don't need to use my full strength at all. I can kill you. I'm so angry. Zhao Xing was really going crazy after being called stinky fish and shrimps by the small Kailin. This was intolerable. At this time, Zhao Xing only had one thought in his mind, and that was to kill the small Kailin at all costs. If I don't kill you today, I swear I'm not a human. Zhao Xing moved quickly and rushed toward the small Kailin without any regard for his life. Behind Zhao Xing, the warrior of the intermediate stage of the Saint Realm was very helpless and could only brace himself and rush forward. Kill. At the same time, on the other side, Zhong Shuai led a warrior of the intermediate stage of the Saint Realm and charged toward Jiyu Yang. For Zhong Shuai, the temptation and pressure of the Dan puppet of the advanced stage of the Saint Realm was huge. After all, Zhong Shuai's cultivation was only at the advanced stage of the Saint Realm. Under the same cultivation, Zhong Shuai did not dare to say that he could kill the Dan puppet with 100% certainty. Once a person began to doubt himself, his confidence would be shaken. Once his confidence was shaken, his fighting strength would be greatly reduced and his aura would be weakened. If his aura was weakened, it would be disastrous whether it was in terms of fighting or cultivation. Shaking his head, Zhong Shuai forced himself to calm down. Rumble. Originally, with Jiyu Yang injured, Zhong Shuai and a warrior of the intermediate stage of the Saint Realm should have been able to deal with him. But now, with Zhong Shuai and a warrior of the intermediate stage of the Saint Realm, they could only be evenly matched with Jiyu Yang and could not kill him. With the two battles erupting, Ningyu had no choice but to quickly contact and Haoping. This time, Ningyu had given a death order. No matter how fierce Jing Fei was, he had to rush back within 3 minutes. Because Ningyu wasn't sure when Song Wu would make a move against Ziyun. Everyone wanted a share of the ethereal physique. Release the restrictions on me. I'll help you deal with this pinnacle stage Saint Realm warrior. Ziyun did not have much of a reaction. She only said to Ning Lu with an indifferent tone, "You better think it through. If I don't make a move, all of you will die today. Although I will die if you don't make a move, don't forget that you will also die if you don't make a move." Ning Lu shrugged his shoulders, indicating that he didn't care. Anyway, even a fool would be able to see through Song Wu's gaze. Due to his excitement, Song Wu's saliva was about to drip out. What do you want? How could Ziyun not know what Song Wu meant? The unceasing flow of saliva, the greed in his eyes, as well as his ghostly gaze, made Ziyun feel disgusted. I don't want to do anything. I'm just a late-stage Heavenly Supreme. What can I do? Ning Lu said in a slightly exaggerated tone, let me give you a piece of advice. You better think of a way to delay for a while before Song Wu makes a move against you. Delay for a while? Why do I need to delay for a while? Ziyun was puzzled. In Ziyun's view, Ning Lu should have released his control over her and begged her to bring him away. But Ning Lu's reaction was completely different. He didn't play by the rules. Ziyun didn't believe that Ning Lu still had a trump card. In other words, Ziyun didn't believe that Ningyu had a trump card. Although she had only interacted with Ningyu for a few hours, Ziyun knew that Ningyu was a special person. He didn't play by the rules. But even if he didn't play by the rules, he wouldn't be able to cause too much of a commotion when facing a pinnacle stage Saint Realm warrior. After all, in front of absolute strength, all schemes were useless. Damn it. Chapter 1809. On the other side, a stern-faced cultivator suddenly appeared beside Ningyu. From the aura emitted by this cultivator, Ziyun could tell that this cultivator's cultivation wasn't low. At this moment, Ningyu placed his right hand on the stern-faced cultivator's back and faintly said, "You can make them stop now." Emachem? Song Wu couldn't help knitting his brows when he heard Ningyu's indifferent words. Song Wu was in the pinnacle Saint Realm, so he could naturally tell that the stern-faced cultivator before Ningyu was in the late-phase Saint Realm. If it was just a late-phase Saint Realm cultivator, Song Wu might not even bother to look at him. But most importantly, the stern-faced cultivator's body was in a weird state. Starting from his face, his neck, his upper body, his lower body, and his ankles were all slightly swollen. Furthermore, the swelling was getting worse. Self-destruct. Song Wu suddenly thought of this word when he saw the stern-faced cultivator's state. His entire body was swollen and his aura was spreading. This was clearly a sign of self-destruction. Who was this mid-phase heavenly supreme cultivator? How could he control a late-phase Saint Realm cultivator to self-destruct? Song Wu was very puzzled, extremely puzzled. However, he was worried that Ningyu would really make the stern-faced cultivator self-destruct, so Song Wu waved his hand and signaled Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai to stop their attacks. Rustle, 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 rustle. After they stopped their attacks, Zhao Xing, Zhong Shuai, and the two mid-phase Saint Realm cultivators moved and descended beside Song Wu. As for the little Chelin, Jiyu Yang, and the rest, they gathered around Ningyu. Ningyu, I'll help you this time. How about you let me go after we get through this? Jiyu Yang lowered his voice when he gathered around Ningyu. I guarantee that I'll hold up an late-phase Saint Realm and a mid-phase Saint Realm cultivator until your reinforcements arrive. You're overthinking it. Ningyu shrugged his shoulders and replied indifferently, I don't have reinforcements. If you can hold back that peak sage, I can let you go. Turning his head to look at Song Wu, who was emitting a powerful aura, Jiyu Yang's face darkened. Not to mention that he was injured. Even if he was not injured, he would not be able to fight against a martial artist at the peak of the Sage Realm. Why did Ningyu ask him to deal with Song Wu, who was at the peak of the Sage Realm? How about we both take a step back? As Ningyu injected Yuan Qi into the cold-looking man's body, he said to Song Wu, you leave with your friend, and I will leave with mine. From now on, we will mind our own business. Do you think you can fool me with a warrior at the peak of the Saint Realm? Song Wu said disdainfully, to tell you the truth, I'm not scared. I know you're not scared. I just don't want both of us to suffer, Ningyu said. Ha ha ha. At this moment, Song Wu laughed. His laughter was extremely savage. After laughing, Song Wu's face turned cold and he said coldly, so what if a late-stage Sage Realm cultivator self-destructs? If you really dare to let him self-destruct, you will definitely do it secretly. You will definitely not push him out in the open. Pa. 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 Ningyu clapped his hands and said, you're smart. It's true that I don't dare to let him self-destruct. But if someone forces me to do so, I have no other choice. You're threatening me, Song Wu said, squinting his eyes. If you insist, then treat it as me threatening you. After saying this, Ningyu closed his eyes and did not speak anymore. Since Ningyu did not speak, Yunmu and the rest would naturally not speak. In an instant, the entire area became quiet. Damn it! Song Wu took a glance at Ziyun and couldn't help cursing in his heart. Just when he was about to get his hands on the duck, he did not expect that the cooked duck would fly away at the crucial moment. Song Wu was unwilling because he had already made up his mind. No matter how difficult it was, he would take down Ziyun and bring her to a higher plane. Even if he did not want Cash, Little Chelin, or the pellet puppet, he had to get the ethereal body. Zhao Xing, Zhong Shuai, go. I don't believe that he really dares to let that cold-looking cultivator self-destruct. After a while, Song Wu gritted his teeth and said fiercely, as long as we can take down the Little Chelin and the pellet puppet, I will definitely put in a few good words for you in front of the Grandmaster. I will ask the Grandmaster to personally refine an elixir for you, giving you the opportunity to reach the pinnacle of the Sage Realm. Really? Hearing Song Wu's promise, Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai revealed an excited expression. The two of them were different from Song Wu. When Song Wu was in a higher plane, his cultivation far surpassed the Sage Realm. As for the two of them, even in a higher plane, their cultivation was only in the late stage of the Sage Realm. There were two reasons why they could not break through to the pinnacle of the Sage Realm in a higher plane. Firstly, their talent was really low. Secondly, there was no pill emperor to refine elixir for them. As the saying went, if one's talent was not enough, they could make up for it with elixir. Song Wu's status was not low. If he personally pleaded, the Grandmaster would definitely refine elixir for the two of them. The more they thought about it, the more excited Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai became. How can this be fake? Song Wu's expression was gloomy as he said, follow the original plan. I don't believe that they would really dare to let a late-stage Sage Realm martial artist self-destruct. Go. Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai looked at each other and saw a little nervousness in each other's eyes. Although they were nervous, in order to reach the pinnacle of the sage realm, the two of them still braced themselves and rushed toward Ningyu. Very well, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Looking at Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai who were constantly rushing toward him, a cold look appeared in the corner of Ningyu's eyes. In the next moment, Ningyu's right hand slapped the back of the cold-looking man and pushed him toward Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai. Oh no! Originally, Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai were extremely nervous. They were afraid that Ningyu would let the cold-looking man self-destruct. Now that they saw Ningyu push the cold-looking man out, the two of them turned pale with fright and hurriedly dodged left and right. Now, seeing Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai dodging left and right, the little Qilin, Jiyu Yang, and even Ziyun quickly rushed out. In fact, Ningyu had already arranged everything. Ningyu knew that Song Wu would definitely not come over himself. He would definitely let Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai come over to test the waters. As long as Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai dared to come over, the little Qilin, Jiyu Yang, and Ziyun would attack. They did not hope to kill the two of them. They only hoped to seriously injure them and make them lose most of their fighting strength. Think about it, if Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai lost their combat power, then Song Wu alone would not be able to stir up too much trouble. Swish! Swish! The little Qilin, Ziyun, and Jiyu Yang had a tacit understanding. Among them, the little Qilin attacked Zhao Xing, while Ziyun and Jiyu Yang attacked Zhong Shuai. Song Wu, save us. Seeing the little Qilin and Jiyu Yang rushing toward them, Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai's expressions changed drastically. They retreated while screaming. In fact, under normal circumstances, the two of them would not be afraid of the little Qilin and Ziyun. Chapter 1810. Two Pieces of Trash. Seeing Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai panicking, Song Wu's face turned extremely ugly. However, although Song Wu was very angry, for the safety of Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai, he still braced himself and charged forward. Of course, since he had chosen to charge forward, Song Wu would definitely not be stupid enough to face the cold-looking man who was about to self-destruct. Regardless of whether the cold-looking man would self-destruct or not, Song Wu would not put himself in danger. When he charged out, Song Wu brought out the remaining two intermediate Sage Realm cultivators. Abandon pawns to protect the general. Song Wu decided to let the two intermediate Sage Realm cultivators face the cold-looking man, while he faced the little Qilin, Ziyun, and the rest. Get lost. As Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai were running in the opposite direction, they soon met with Song Wu. Song Wu didn't show any mercy to Zhao Xing and Zhong Shuai, these two cowards. Instead, he kicked each of them back to where they came from. I'll deal with Song Wu. Seeing that the other party was charging over, the little Qilin immediately turned around and gave up on Zhao Xing, turning to face Song Wu. Rumble. The fight between the two pinnacle experts instantly caused earth-shattering fluctuations in the surroundings. Both the little Qilin and Song Wu were very powerful. Even if the little Qilin was at an absolute disadvantage, it would not be killed in a short time if the situation continued. The outcome of the fight between the two of them could not be determined in a short time, and there would not even be any casualties. However, on the other side of the battlefield, casualties soon appeared. When Ziyun and Jiyu Yang joined hands, their fighting strength was not to be underestimated. Furthermore, Zhong Shuai did not intend to resist at the beginning. It was Song Wu who forced him to turn around and attack. Therefore, the battle on his side was the first to be decided. Crack, crack. Ziyun and Jiyu Yang's attacks landed on Zhong Shuai's chest at almost the same time. The powerful force directly caused Zhong Shuai to fly backward, and several of his ribs were broken. In this state, Zhong Shuai's fighting strength had dropped by at least 80%. Crash. Zhong Qiong and Old Man Tianji reacted very quickly. Almost at the same time when Zhong Shuai was sent flying, they rushed out, intending to subdue Zhong Shuai and buy time for Ziyun and Jiyu Yang. After all, the pressure on the little Qilin's side was great, and Ziyun and Jiyu Yang's main task was to attack Zhao Xing. After dealing with Zhao Xing, they would go and help the little Qilin. Although Elder Tianji and Zhong Qiong were not strong, they had no problem dealing with the heavily injured Zhong Shuai. Oh my god! Seeing that Zhong Shuai was defeated in an instant, Zhao Xing was so scared that his legs went soft, and even his voice was shaky. Run! At this moment, Zhao Xing only had one thought in his mind, and that was to escape. Who cared if he was at the peak of a saint, Song Wu, a master, or a pill? Only when he was alive could he pursue these things. If he lost his life, what was the use of medicinal pills? Stop chasing. Go and help little Kailin. Originally, Jiyu Yang wanted to chase after Zhao Xing, but Ziyun had seen through him. Now wasn't the time to chase after Zhao Xing. Instead, he had to hurry over to help the little Qilin. So what if Zhao Xing ran away? At least in a short period of time, he wouldn't be able to stir up too much of a storm. Go. Jiyu Yang looked at Zhao Xing's back unwillingly, then turned around and joined the battle in the air. To be honest, Jiyu Yang really wanted to capture Zhao Xing alive. Because until now, Jiyu Yang still had hope that Ningyu wouldn't kill him. From Jiyu Yang's point of view, as long as he could capture Zhong Shuai and Zhao Xing alive, and let Ningyu see that he was still useful, he wouldn't die. But Ziyun had already said that she would help the little Qilin. If he was still stubborn, it would definitely leave a bad impression in Ningyu's heart. In order to survive, Jiyu Yang decided to follow Ziyun and help the little Qilin. Rumble. In the air, the battle was getting more and more intense. Originally, the little Qilin was not Song Wu's opponent and could only bitterly hold on. But after Jiyu Yang and Ziyun joined the battle, the pressure on its body was instantly reduced. Although the pressure was reduced, it didn't mean that the little Qilin had a chance of winning. On the contrary, the chances of winning were getting lower and lower, because Song Wu changed his strategy. In the beginning, Song Wu didn't use his full strength because he wanted to capture the little Qilin alive. But after seeing Jiyu Yang and Ziyun join the battle, Song Wu immediately changed his strategy and used all his strength. Since Song Wu used all his strength, the ones who suffered were naturally the little Qilin and the rest. Therefore, when Ziyun and Jiyu Yang joined the battle, not only did they not help the little Qilin, but they also put the little Qilin in an even more dangerous situation. They shouldn't be Song Wu's opponent. We have to plan early. Looking at the battle in the air, Ninglu said in a deep voice, now we have two choices. First, when an Haoping comes, let him join the battle and fight Song Wu to death. Speaking up to here, Ninglu paused for a moment and immediately continued, as for the second choice, I think you know it even without me saying it. Leave. Leave as soon as possible. There's no way to leave. Ningyu shook his head and said, since Song Wu didn't take the initiative to fight the cold-looking man, it means that he's still afraid of the cold-looking man exploding himself. We can use this to force Song Wu. How do we force him? Ninglu asked doubtfully. He didn't know what Ningyu was planning. Ningyu didn't answer Ninglu's question immediately. Instead, he shifted his gaze to the other side. After a while, Ningyu said, they're coming. Swish. Swish. As soon as Ningyu said the word they're coming, two figures, one in front and one behind, flew straight to this side. An Haoping. Jing Fei. At first, Ninglu didn't know what Ningyu was going to do. However, when he saw An Haoping and Jing Fei suddenly flying over, as well as the cold-looking man in An Haoping's hand, he instantly understood everything. Are you really going to let the cold-looking man explode himself? Ninglu's face was full of disbelief. He looked a little dumbfounded. After all, the cold-looking man was a genuine late-stage Saint Realm warrior. If a late-stage Saint Realm warrior blew himself up here, the entire Four-Corner City would probably be razed to the ground if there was no one to stop him. That's my plan, but it depends on whether Song Wu cooperates. Ningyu looked solemn and said, if he cooperates, it's good for everyone. However, if he doesn't, then we'll all die together. Damn it. Song Wu had no idea what Ningyu was thinking. However, Song Wu knew clearly about the sudden appearance of two late-stage Saint Realm warriors. To be honest, with Song Wu's current combat strength, he could easily deal with two more late-stage Saint Realm warriors, let alone two late-stage Saint Realm warriors. What made Song Wu angry was that he found that one of the late-stage Saint Realm warriors was holding the cold-looking man. This discovery was the reason why the cold-looking man was really angry and even a little scared. The cold-looking man returned, and his body swelled even more. Chapter 1811. Holy shit. Jin Fei was in a terrible mood. He was blocked by an Haoping in Four Corner City, which prevented him from coming to the immortal crystal vein. Originally, when an Haoping took the initiative to leave, Jin Fei felt that his chance had come. Finally, he could go and find trouble with Ningyu. Who would have thought that he would see a pinnacle Sage Realm martial artist? Moreover, none of the three who fought with the pinnacle Sage Realm martial artist was weaker than him. Qilin, who was in the intermediate Sage Realm, could easily kill him. Ziyun, who was in the intermediate Sage Realm, could not be his opponent. As for Dan Jin, who was in the advanced Sage Realm, Jin Fei knew that he could not defeat her. Since the enemy was powerful, he should leave first. Jin Fei was not an indecisive person. He was very clear about the principle of being decisive when it was time to make a decision. Therefore, when he saw the pinnacle Sage Realm martial artists fighting and an Haoping foolishly rushing forward, Jin Fei immediately decided to leave. Where there's life, there's hope. He would first go to the Pill Emperor City to meet up with the Jin family's experts, then slowly think of a way to deal with Ningyu. Jin Fei did not believe that Ningyu would not go to the Pill Emperor City to participate in the alchemy conference. Consider yourself lucky. Before leaving, Jin Fei did not forget to leave some harsh words. Of course, in this situation, Jin Fei's harsh words were powerless. Since you're here, why not stay and watch the show? Seeing that Jin Fei wanted to leave, Ningyu gave Ninglu a look and said to Jin Fei, "That pinnacle Sage Realm martial artist wants to monopolize the immortal crystal vein. Don't you think you should go and persuade him?" "I'll persuade him a few times." Jin Fei wished that he could skin Ningyu alive. Actually, Jin Fei's thoughts were simple. He could give up on the immortal crystal vein. The most important thing now was to leave as soon as possible, before that pinnacle Sage Realm martial artist noticed him. Otherwise, it would be too late if he waited for that pinnacle Sage Realm martial artist to notice him. "I can rope him in." Song Wu, who was fighting far away, instantly saw Jin Fei's expression. Since Ningyu and Jin Fei had a grudge against each other, he might as well rope Jin Fei in and let him stop the cold man. As long as the cold-looking man did not approach him, Song Wu had absolute confidence that he could leave. Even if the cold-looking man were to self-destruct, he would be able to escape successfully from such a long distance. At most, he would only suffer some minor injuries. Thinking of this, Song Wu hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Jin Fei. "If you help me stop that cold-looking warrior at the late stage of the Sage Realm, I can give you 1,000 immortal crystal." "I can't believe it." Hearing Song Wu's words, Jin Fei was dumbfounded. "As long as I stop the stern-looking man, I can get 1,000 immortal crystals." No matter how he looked at it, this was a good deal. However, Jin Fei was a person who would not release an eagle until he saw the rabbit. If Song Wu wanted to persuade him with his glib tongue, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. "Give me 500 immortal crystals as a deposit first." Once a person's greed took over, they would desperately suppress their rationality. At this time, Jin Fei's greed had the upper hand. He began to bargain with Song Wu. "I promise I will stop the cold man." In Jin Fei's opinion, it did not matter who he worked with. Since he could get so many immortal crystals by working with a warrior at the peak of the Sage Realm, why not? Besides, Jin Fei did not think that he would be hindered by Song Wu in the end. After all, the Jin family was not to be trifled with. This time, there were warriors at the peak of the Sage Realm among the warriors of the Jin family who had descended from the high-level planes. As long as it could catch mice, it was a good cat. At this time, Jin Fei was even a little excited. According to the distribution method discussed by the Four Empires, the Jin family of the Qianya Empire could get 250 immortal crystals at most. Now, there was a great chance that he could get 500 immortal crystals. As for getting 1,000 immortal crystals from Song Wu, Jin Fei did not even think about it. In other words, Jin Fei was the one who wanted to get something without risking anything. Damn, why is this person even more greedy than me? Hearing Jin Fei's words, Song Wu's whole body became uncomfortable. The reason why he wanted to work with Jing Fei was that he wanted to solve the problem of the cold-looking man self-destructing at the lowest cost. On the other hand, he wanted to use Jing Fei to catch Ningyu. Song Wu was not stupid. He knew very well that although Ningyu's cultivation seemed to be only at the middle stage of the Sky Supreme stage, he was very powerful. It could be said that without Ningyu in the middle, little Kailin and the others were just a mass of loose sand. Come here, I'll give you 500 immortal crystals. Song Wu gritted his teeth as if he had made a big sacrifice. He continued, I, Song Wu, can swear to the heavenly Tao that if I cheat you, I will never be able to return to the high-level planes. Is he really going to give me 500 immortal crystals? Song Wu's behavior indeed made Jing Fei suspicious. Logically speaking, Jing Fei should completely believe Song Wu when he made the heavenly Tao oath. However, for some reason, Jing Fei felt that there was a trap. I'll risk it. The bold ones will be stuffed to death, and the timid ones will starve to death. Jing Fei was a person who liked to gamble. He immediately decided to take a gamble. If Song Wu went back on his word, he could find a way to escape. After all, Song Wu was still fighting with little Kailin and the others, so he should not have time to deal with him. Swoosh. Before departing, Jing Fei glanced at An Haoping who had landed next to Ningyu. Then, his figure flashed and he rushed towards Song Wu. You go over too. Bring the cold-looking man over. Seeing Jing Fei rush towards Song Wu, Ningyu waved his hand and signaled An Haoping to bring the cold-looking man over. Since he was putting on a show, he had to go all the way. The previous few times, Ningyu had used fake self-destruction to deceive others. This time, Ningyu decided to really let the cold-looking man self-destruct. In other words, he had to increase the amount of essence qi that was injected into the cold-looking man's body, so that he was at the critical point of self-destruction or not. Only this way, it would be convincing. Otherwise, it would be hard for an old fox like Song Wu to believe him. I got it. Just as Jing Fei rushed towards Song Wu and An Haoping rushed out with the cold-looking man, Ninglu's voice suddenly rang in Ningyu's ears. When the two words that Ninglu said fell into Ningyu's ears, it made Ningyu's heart moved. Just now, Ningyu gave Ninglu a look, meaning to let Ninglu think of a way to get some information from Zhong Shui. As long as he could get some useful information, then he would have the capital to negotiate with Song Wu. These people are mainly under the orders of Master Gong Yangqing. They came here through the Pill Imperial City's Alchemy Association's internal teleportation array. Ninglu sorted out his thoughts and immediately said, they only have one goal, and that is to bring away a Kailin as an elixir for Gong Yangqing to refine. 2. Don't tell me these useless things. I want to know if we can use Zhong Shui to keep Song Wu in check. Ningyu waved his hand and interrupted Ninglu's words, asking in a deep voice. Chapter 1812. I'm afraid not. Ninglu shook his head and said, in Song Wu's eyes, Zhong Shui is just a small fry. Song Wu doesn't care about his life or death. That's right, that Grandmaster Gong Yang. How did he know that there was a Qilin in Four Corner City? Since he could not use Zhong Shui to keep Song Wu in check, Ningyu did not dwell on this matter and asked in confusion. Gong Yangqing had Song Wu and the others come here to take away a Qilin, which meant that he knew there was a Qilin here. Ningyu found it strange. Gong Yangqing was in Alchemy Emperor City, which was very far from Four Corner City. How could Gong Yangqing calculate such a long distance? Zhong Shui doesn't know the specifics. Gong Yangqing only told them that there was a Qilin in Four Corner City and told them to take it away through the teleportation formation. Ninglu replied. You guys leave this place first to prevent Song Wu from doing anything desperate. Taking a deep breath, Ningyu said in a low voice, after you leave, think of a way to evacuate the people in Four Corner City. Ningyu, I think there might be a change in the situation. Hearing Ningyu's words, Elder Tianji frowned slightly and said, I did a divination just now, and the divination showed 4 words, enemies have invaded. Enemies have invaded? Ningyu was slightly taken aback and said, what do you mean? To put it simply, your former enemies are about to enter the battlefield, Elder Tianji said in a certain tone. I have many enemies in the past. Who will enter the battlefield and influence the situation. Ningyu said doubtfully. Crack. However, before Ningyu could finish his sentence, a sudden change occurred. The void suddenly broke, and a figure dashed out of the space, charging at Ningyu at a terrifying speed. Kai Kai. This figure was shockingly fast, and even the friction with the air made a hissing sound. Not good. The sudden change caused Ningyu's expression to change drastically. Others might not know who the martial artist rushing towards him was, but he himself was very clear about it. Liu Chuanji. Liu Chuanji was at the peak of the Saint Realm, back in the Emperor Palace. If Liu Chuanji hadn't deceived him with Smiling Tiger's self-explosion, Ningyu and the others would have died there. Now that Liu Chuanji had returned, how could Ningyu not be shocked? While he was shocked, Ningyu's heart sank to the bottom. Originally, Song Wu, who was at the peak of the Sage Realm, was enough to give him a headache. Now that Liu Chuanji, who was at the peak of the Sage Realm, had appeared, the situation instantly became even worse. You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. Ningyu, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. While flying, Liu Chuanji said coldly, speaking of which, I really have to thank the late-stage sage martial artist you gave me. Because of him, my strength has improved a little, and the combat power that I can use in this low-level celestial spirit realm has increased by at least 10%. Looking at Liu Chuanji, who was approaching him, Ningyu's eyes turned rapidly as he thought of a countermeasure. From Liu Chuanji's current posture, it was obvious that he would not give up until he achieved his goal. This situation was the most difficult to deal with. Bribe. Use his strength to resist. Escape. Ningyu knew very well that no matter what method he used, he would definitely not be able to escape from Liu Chuanji. Hurry up and leave. Seeing that Liu Chuanji was about to rush to Ningyu's side, Ninglu pushed Ningyu away and used all his strength to attack Liu Chuanji. Ninglu's intention was very clear. Sacrifice him so that Ningyu could leave. However, Ningyu treated Ninglu as his brother. How could he step on his brother's shoulder to escape? Moreover, even if he left now, it would definitely be too late. After all, it would be difficult to escape from a martial artist at the peak of the Sage Realm. How dare you? In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, a roar came from midair. Hearing this roar, Liu Chuanji paused for a moment and looked over. Damn! This glance caused Liu Chuanji to stop his attack. Liu Chuanji's gaze was fixed on the little Qilin. A living Qilin was terrifyingly valuable. Dan Kai, ethereal body. Moreover, Liu Chuanji also discovered Jiyu Yang, who was in the late-phase Sage Realm, and Ziyun, who was in the middle-phase Sage Realm. A Qilin was already very attractive to Liu Chuanji. In addition to Dan Kai, who was in the late-phase Sage Realm, and ethereal body, who was in the middle-phase Sage Realm, it was completely reasonable for Liu Chuanji to give up on attacking Ningyu. However, although Liu Chuanji gave up on attacking, he still casually waved his hand. Poochie. The cold light flew over and collided with Ninglu, sending him flying and spurting out a large mouthful of blood. Ice-looking man. What made Liu Chuanji surprised was that this wasn't the end. When he saw the cold-looking man in Haoping's hand, Liu Chuanji instantly understood. Same old trick. These words appeared in Liu Chuanji's mind. Back then, Ningyu had used this trick to scare him away. Now, Ningyu wanted to use the same method to scare away the pinnacle Sage Realm Martialess. I can totally sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. I can let Ningyu use the explosion of the cold-looking man to scare away the pinnacle Sage Realm Martialist. Then, I can enjoy the Qilin and ethereal body alone. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Liu Chuanji's mind. The last thought left a deep impression in Liu Chuanji's mind. Swoosh. Thinking of this, Liu Chuanji's figure flashed and he found a place in the air to float. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and acted like he was watching a show. Damn it. In fact, Songwu had already noticed Liu Chuanji when he appeared. However, even if Qilin and Ziyun didn't stop, he naturally wouldn't stop first. However, now that Liu Chuanji was acting like he was watching a show, he completely put down his pride. He forcefully blasted out a move and forced Qilin and Ziyun to retreat. Then, he grabbed Jin Fei and flew to another area. Song Wu retreated. Little Qilin and Ziyun hurriedly returned to Ningyu's side. Even the cold-looking man, and Haoping, also returned the way he came and stood next to Ningyu. Liu Chuanji, Song Wu, and Ningyu's group were protecting the city. None of them took the initiative to attack. The situation was a little confusing at the moment. The three parties seemed to be at peace with each other, but each had their own fears. Originally, Ningyu's side was the weakest side. However, with Liu Chuanji as a hindrance, they became the stronger side. Because Liu Chuanji and Song Wu were both arrogant people. One was the young master of the sacred divine palace, and the other was the favorite of Gong Yangqing. The probability of their cooperation was extremely low. All things considered, Ningyu's group would not be in danger for the time being. Tick-tock, tick-tock. None of the three parties spoke. They all chose to remain silent. Time was ticking away. Ningyu could drag it out, no matter how long he dragged it out. However, Liu Chuanji and Song Wu couldn't drag it out for long. Song Wu's mission was to bring a Qilin back to Elixir Emperor City and hand it over to Gong Yangqing. Chapter 1813. Liu Chuanji knew how powerful the demonic humans were. Under the circumstances where there was an energy seal in his body, he was still able to erupt with such a shocking battle power. One could imagine, once the energy seal was broken, just how much would his strength increase to. At the very least, Liu Chuanji knew that he was no match for the human demon at the same cultivation level. Therefore, among the three forces, Liu Chuanji and Song Wu were the most anxious. There is no enmity between us. We can work together. Song Wu was the first to lose his patience. After all, Gong Yangqing was waiting over at Alchemy Emperor City. He could not afford to delay Gong Yangqing's important matter. How? Originally, Liu Chuanji was worried about the arrival of the human demons, so he wanted to take the initiative to join hands with Song Wu. But now that Song Wu took the initiative to bring it up, Liu Chuanji was naturally very happy. Because when it came to joining forces, whoever suggested it first would be at a disadvantage. Qilin and ethereal body belong to me. That late-stage Saint Pellet belongs to you. Song Wu said. Have you lost your mind? Hearing Song Wu's distribution method, Liu Chuanji almost died of anger. There were only 3 useful people in total. Qilin, ethereal body, pill puppet of the late sage stage. In terms of importance, the Qilin was on par with the ethereal body, while the late stage sage pill puppet was the least important. Now that Song Wu had asked for both the ethereal body and the Qilin, if he wasn't crazy, then he was treating Liu Chuanji like a fool. What's the hurry? I'm not done yet. Song Wu frowned and said, apart from the late-stage sage Dan Ming, I'll leave Ningyu and the rest to you. Since you're not sincere, then let's not talk anymore. Liu Chuanji also had a temper. He said coldly, continue to drag it out. Anyway, I have plenty of time. There's no hurry. We can drag it out slowly. After saying this, Liu Chuanji raised his eyebrows at Song Wu, then shifted his gaze to Ningyu, as if he wanted to cooperate with Ningyu. Seeing Liu Chuanji's action, Song Wu was so angry that his nose became crooked. If Liu Chuanji really cooperated with Ningyu, then he was basically done for. Of the 3 forces, the weakest was Ningyu's side. His and Liu Chuanji's strength should be about the same. Once 2 factions joined forces, the other faction would be doomed. Therefore, when Liu Chuanji looked at Ningyu, Song Wu immediately gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, I can give you the empty spirit body again. In Song Wu's heart, it was impossible for Qilin to give up. Because the Qilin was specifically requested by Gong Yangqing. As for the ethereal body, Ziyun, and the late-phase Saint Realm pill puppet Jiyu Yang, he could give them away. In short, the Qilin and the empty spirit body belong to me. Dan Kai and Ning, you are yours. Liu Chuanji stated his request, this is my bottom line. That's impossible. Song Wu shook his head and said, the others can be discussed, but I must have the Qilin. Discuss? How are you going to discuss this with me? I also want the Qilin. You can choose the rest. Liu Chuanji raised his eyebrows and said sinisterly. Song Wu had exposed too much. From Song Wu's attitude, Liu Chuanji could easily tell that he wanted the Qilin and was determined to get it. When both sides negotiated, he knew the other party's bottom line. He would definitely take the initiative and get the greatest benefits. Don't force me. If you anger me, I can cooperate with Ningyu and the others, Song Wu said fiercely. I don't care. Liu Chuanji shrugged and had an indifferent attitude. Although Liu Chuanji looked indifferent on the surface, he was very nervous in his heart. If Song Wu really reached an agreement with Ningyu, it would be disastrous for him. However, Liu Chuanji also had confidence. No matter how he looked at it, it was impossible for Ningyu to reach an agreement with Song Wu. Because Song Wu wanted the Qilin, and Ningyu would definitely not be stupid enough to give the Qilin to Song Wu. This was not only a matter of principle, but also a matter of betraying a friend. Ningyu, are we going to keep dragging this on like this? Liu Chuanji was still wrangling with Song Wu over there, but Ningyu had already started chatting with Ninglu. Ninglu looked at Liu Chuanji and Song Wu with a face full of worry, and said in a low voice, if we continue to delay, I'm afraid there will be more people coming out from the transportation formation. If we don't continue to delay, are you going to come out and deal with Song Wu and Liu Chuanji? Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, relax, be confident. What we need to do now is relax and be confident, and pretend that someone is coming to help. What do you mean? Ninglu frowned, not knowing what Ningyu meant. Isn't that simple? I got the news from Zhongshuai that Song Wu has to bring the little Qilin to Pill Emperor City. So if we continue to delay, Song Wu will definitely be the first to give up. Ningyu shrugged and said with a very confident look, as for Liu Chuanji, don't be fooled by his confident appearance. In reality, he is even more worried than you, Song Wu. Why would Liu Chuanji be worried? Ninglu was puzzled and completely confused. Ningyu glared at Ninglu and said, Liu Chuanji is worried about the human devil. Human devil? Ninglu was still very confused. Ningyu's face was full of black lines. Ninglu didn't know about the human devil. Back in the Moling mountain range, Ninglu and the Dark Emperor had returned to Giant Shield City first. Ninglu naturally didn't know what happened after that with the human devil. Anyway, don't worry about it. You just need to know that you don't need to do anything right now. Just wait here quietly. Ningyu waved his hand, indicating that Ninglu shouldn't think too much. After that, Ningyu moved his gaze towards the little Qilin and said, please pay more attention to the teleportation formation in the depths of the immortal crystal vein. Notify me at the first possible moment if there's even the slightest sign of trouble. Don't worry. I know what to do. The little Qilin nodded to show that it wasn't stupid. After giving a few hurried instructions, Ningyu sat cross-legged on the ground and slowly closed his eyes. What are you doing? Ninglu was puzzled when he saw Ningyu's actions. Cultivating to break through to the late stage of Sky Supreme. Ningyu replied indifferently. Ninglu opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he didn't know what to say when he heard Ningyu's words. You really have a big heart. The fire is about to burn your ass, but you still have the heart to cultivate and break through to the late stage of Sky Supreme? Cut the crap. Hurry up and give me the pure energy you absorbed from Shirong. I want to break through to the late stage of Sky Supreme. Just as Ninglu was in a daze, Ningyu's voice rang out in his ears. What the F***ck? Ninglu immediately cursed. He had indeed absorbed a lot of pure energy from Shirong, but he'd left it for himself to break through to the peak of Sky Supreme. If he gave it to Ningyu, how could he break through to the peak of Sky Supreme? Moreover, even if he gave it to Ningyu, Ningyu wouldn't be able to break through to the late stage of Sky Supreme. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Chapter 1814. Are you really going to break through to the late stage Sky Supreme? Although Ninglu felt that it was a little unbelievable, he still understood Ningyu very well. Generally speaking, Ningyu wouldn't do something he wasn't confident in. At first, it sounded like Ningyu was a little rash to break through to the late stage Sky Supreme now. But on second thought, it made a lot of sense. First, Song Wu and Liu Chuanji were in a stalemate. The two were suspicious of each other and focused on each other. If Ningyu were to break through to the late-stage Sky Supreme now, it would naturally put a lot of pressure on them. Putting aside whether he could reach the late-phase Heavenly Sovereign Realm, even if he failed, it wouldn't be a loss to Ningyu. Perhaps Liu Chuanji and Song Wu would think that Ningyu had a trump card and wouldn't dare to act rashly. Of course it's true. Cut the crap and give me the pure energy. Ningyu waved his hand impatiently. I'll make you pay for delaying my plans. Swish. Ninglu couldn't be bothered with Ningyu. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed an interspatial pouch to Ningyu. Pa. Ningyu stretched out his right hand and caught the storage bag firmly. He then took out a small piece of leaf from inside. Holy shit! Ningyu's jaw almost dropped when he sensed the terrifying energy contained within the leaf. The pure energy within the leaf wasn't little, but a lot. It was terrifyingly abundant. According to Ningyu's initial estimates, once he devoured all the energy, forget about the late-stage Sky Supreme, he might even be able to break through to the peak Sky Supreme. No. Ninglu felt that Ningyu's smile was a little strange. He hurriedly reached into his pocket and began to inspect it. Don't. This inspection caused Ninglu's expression to change drastically. He wanted to rush up and snatch the interspatial pouch back. Ninglu had prepared 2 interspatial pouches. One of the storage bags naturally contained the pure energy he had devoured from Shirong. As for the second storage bag, it was the energy he had accumulated over the years. Ninglu had originally planned to give the first storage bag to Ningyu, but he had accidentally given the second storage bag to Ningyu. Giving the first storage bag to Ningyu had already made Ninglu's heart ache. Now that the second storage bag had fallen into Ningyu's hands, how could he not panic? In a panic, Ninglu rushed out, wanting to snatch the storage bag back. Whoosh! However, when Ningyu saw the amount of energy in the storage bag, he had already prepared a backup plan. Zhongqiong moved and blocked Ninglu's way. Get out of my way. Seeing that Ningyu had already started to devour the energy, Ninglu became very anxious and scolded Zhongqiong. Be careful, I won't be polite to you. Don't make things difficult for me. It's Ningyu's order. Zhongqiong was expressionless. Fine. You win. Zhongqiong's cultivation was at the mid-stage Saint realm. Ninglu knew that he wasn't his match, so he could only leave some harsh words and sit cross-legged next to Ningyu. Taking out the first storage bag, Ninglu took out a golden leaf and began to devour the energy within the golden leaf in a frenzy. Ninglu's idea was simple. Since you want to reach the late-stage Sky Supreme, fine, I'll do it too. But I'll reach the peak Sky Supreme. If I don't have enough energy, you'll definitely give me back the extra energy. What are the two of them doing? Yunmu watched Ningyu and Ninglu's actions with his mouth slightly open. He was a little dumbfounded. The fire is burning your eyebrows, and you still dare to cultivate here? You're simply courting death. What else? One is trying to reach the late-stage Sky Supreme, and the other is trying to reach the peak Sky Supreme. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not make a fuss. He shrugged his shoulders and said, what we need to do now is relax, do everything possible to relax and pretend that nothing has happened. Really? Yunmu asked hesitantly. Listen to me, yes. Elder Tianji nodded lightly, then slowly closed his eyes, as if entering some kind of ethereal realm. Why is he trying to reach the late-stage Sky Supreme now? Although Liu Chuanji and Song Wu were arguing fiercely, they were very concerned about Ningyu's every move. Especially when they saw Ningyu start to break through to the late-stage Sky Supreme, they instantly stopped talking and started guessing Ningyu's intentions. Could it be that Ningyu really has nothing to fear? As the young master of Sacred Divine Palace, Liu Chuanji had always thought about many things. Through Ningyu's attempt to break through to the late-stage Sky Supreme, he thought that Ningyu might have a backup plan, a very big one at that. Otherwise, why would Ningyu dare to break through to the late-stage Sky Supreme now? Bang! Looking at Ningyu's posture, it didn't seem like he was putting on a show. Because every once in a while, there would be a muffled sound. Every muffled sound represented that Ningyu had broken through to the late-stage Sky Supreme. Rumble. Rumble. Just as Liu Chuanji's thoughts were running wild, a terrifying rumble suddenly rang out not far from them. Liu Chuanji was dumbfounded when he heard the terrifying rumbling sounds. He reached the late-stage Sky Supreme just like that. Liu Chuanji raised his head and glanced at Ningyu. He felt like he couldn't wrap his head around it. Even in the sacred Divine Palace, it was rare for someone to break through from the mid-stage Sky Supreme to the late-stage Sky Supreme in such a short time. In other words, even in sacred Divine Palace, Ningyu was one of the top geniuses. Gulp. Compared to Liu Chuanji's shock, Songwu was even more shocked. Ningyu always managed to surprise him, catching him off guard. Originally, he was determined to obtain the little Qilin, the pill puppet, and the empty spiritual body. But Liu Chuanji's sudden appearance on the battlefield disrupted all his plans. Now that Ningyu had broken through to the late-stage Sky Supreme, how could he not be shocked? The essence of the World Tree is really monstrous. Ningyu didn't know what Liu Chuanji and Songwu were thinking. Right now, he was extremely shocked. When he received the storage bag and the golden leaf, to be honest, even Ningyu didn't think he could break through to the late-stage Sky Supreme in such a short time. Just because some things couldn't be imagined didn't mean they wouldn't happen. After Ningyu absorbed a portion of the pure energy in the golden leaf, he quickly broke through his limit and reached the late-stage Sky Supreme. Moreover, Ningyu could clearly feel it. If he absorbed all the remaining energy in the golden leaf, there was a high chance he could break through to the Sage Realm. However, Ningyu wasn't a fool. Breaking through to the Sage Realm now was the most unwise choice. Ningyu dared to break through to the Peak Sky Supreme now, but he didn't dare to break through to the Sage Realm. Hurry up and return the energy to me. I want to break through to the Half-Sage Realm. Chapter 1815. You want to break through to the Half-Saint Realm? Ningyu's eyes widened when he heard Ninglu's words. Disbelief filled his face. How could Ninglu dare to think about breaking through to the Half-Saint Realm? The Half-Saint Realm and the Sage Realm were two very big thresholds. Although Ningyu had only used a few minutes to break through from the mid-stage Sky Supreme to the late-stage Sky Supreme, it was done with the help of the World Tree's essence. How could it be so easy for Ninglu to break through to the Half-Saint Realm? In other words, even if Ninglu could really break through to the Half-Saint Realm, it would take a lot of time. After such a long period of time, who knew what kind of trouble would happen? At the very least, Liu Chuanji and Songwu wouldn't allow Ninglu to break through to the Half-Saint Realm just like that. Don't cause trouble for me. I can return the energy to the Sun Dark Crystal. Ningyu's expression was solemn as he turned to look at Ninglu. However, Ningyu had only spoken halfway when he stopped abruptly, and he directly cursed. Peak Sky Supreme. Ningyu clearly remembered that Ninglu only devoured the energy after he devoured it. He had broken through from the mid-stage Sky Supreme to the late-stage Sky Supreme, while Ninglu had broken through from the late-stage Sky Supreme to the Peak Sky Supreme. Although they had both increased their cultivation by a level, there was no comparison between the two. Ningyu had broken through to the late-stage Sky Supreme, so his strength should be comparable to a mid-stage sage. He could even kill a mid-stage sage if he used his trump card. Ninglu, on the other hand, could fight against a late-stage sage. That was the difference. Don't do anything stupid. Ningyu's expression was gloomy as he scolded Ninglu. Don't drag us down if you want to die. Why would I want to die? Ninglu said unhappily. I took the wrong storage bag, and you didn't want to exchange it with me, so I could only resort to this. Resort my ass. Tell me the truth. Why did you secretly store so much energy? And all of them are the essence of the World Tree. Ningyu's face was black as he replied coldly. Previously, before you took on a human form, you could still produce a Shenyang pill every once in a while. But ever since you've successfully taken on a human form, forget about Shenyang pills, I can't even see a single bit of energy from you. Ninglu rolled his eyes and said, I must have stored so much of the essence of the World Tree to break through to the Saint Realm. Do you think I can break through to the Saint Realm with the little energy you gave me? I can't out-talk you. With a flick of his wrist, Ningyu returned the rest of the purified World Tree to Ninglu. Ningyu was very clearly aware that since Ninglu had stored so much of the World Tree's essence and even didn't hesitate to charge into the Half-Saint Realm to threaten him, then Ningyu naturally had his own reasons. Regarding this, Ningyu did not want to interfere with Ninglu. If Ninglu wanted to say it, he would definitely say it. Ningyu knew that if he didn't want to say it, he wouldn't be able to get it out no matter how hard he asked. Swoosh! Catching the storage bag that Ningyu threw over, Ninglu carefully put it in his arms and said to Ningyu solemnly, "If we can get out of here alive, I want to ask you for a favor." Seeing Ninglu's serious expression, Ningyu asked telepathically, "What is it?" Actually, Ningyu and Ninglu were communicating through telepathy. Fortunately, Ningyu's soul force had advanced to the pinnacle of the rank 9 realm. Otherwise, his communication with Ninglu would not have been concealed from Liu Chuanji and Song Wu. Exposing the Qilin was not a big deal. After all, there was more than one Qilin in this world. However, if Ninglu was exposed as the world tree, then the consequences would be unthinkable. Ningyu was sure. As long as Ninglu's true identity was exposed, it would only take 3 minutes at most for all the forces to gather in Four Corner City. With the celestial spirit region in chaos, the forces from all the higher planes would wait for the opportunity to descend many pinnacle experts. Among these pinnacle experts, there would definitely be some who had absolute trump cards. According to Ningyu's speculation, there would definitely be someone who could shield the plane barrier in a short time and display combat power that surpassed the Sage Realm. If there was anything in the celestial spirit region that was worth these experts revealing their trump cards, there were probably only two. One was the power of origin, and the other was the world tree. It's not a big deal. I just want you to find me 10,000 immortal crystals. I have a use for them. Ninglu scratched his head and said with slight embarrassment. Fart. As soon as Ninglu finished speaking, Ningyu almost spat out a mouthful of blood. 10,000 immortal crystals? How dare you say that? One had to know that for the Four Corner City, this mine that only had 1,000 immortal crystals, the four empires had sent late-stage sage martial artists over. One could imagine how many people would be attracted by 10,000 immortal crystals. No problem. Ningyu said in a low voice, "When I reach the pinnacle of the Sage Realm, I will definitely find a way to help you find 10,000 immortal crystals. Don't, I'm in a hurry." Hearing Ningyu's words, Ninglu hurriedly said, "You have to find 10,000 immortal crystals before the conference in Alchemy Emperor City starts, or it will be too late. What do you want? Why are you in such a hurry?" Ningyu frowned and asked. "I can sense where the roots of the world tree are." Taking a deep breath, Ninglu said, "But with my current strength, if I want to get close to the roots of the world tree and merge with it, I will need at least 10,000 immortal crystal." The roots of the world tree. Ningyu's expression changed drastically. There was no need to repeat the importance of the world tree. Ningyu knew better than anyone that as long as Ninglu could merge with the roots of the world tree, his strength would increase by at least a few levels. In other words, after merging with the roots of the world tree, Ninglu's cultivation would break through the limits of the Sage Realm and advance to a higher level. At that time, who in the entire celestial spirit region would be a match for them? Of course, Ningyu knew that it was pointless to think about all this now. Just 10,000 immortal crystals was enough for him to drink a pot of water. "Can I use something else instead?" Ningyu asked in a low voice. To be honest, Ningyu was not confident that he would be able to find 10,000 immortal crystals in the celestial spirit region. But if he could use something else instead, Ningyu felt that he could give it a try. "No, I can only use immortal crystals." Ninglu shook his head and poured a bucket of cold water on Ningyu. Rumble. However, before Ninglu could finish his sentence, Liu Chuanji and Song Wu, who were on the other side, seemed to have broken down and started fighting. The scene of two martial artists at the pinnacle of the Sage Realm fighting was truly terrifying. All kinds of spells flew out, shattering the void. "Song Wu, if I can't get the Kirin today, don't even think about getting it." In midair, Liu Chuanji said coldly as he fought with Song Wu, "I have a very special trait. If I can't get something, I will destroy it." As he spoke, Liu Chuanji forced Song Wu to retreat and charged at the little Kirin. "If you want to kill the little Kirin, you should at least ask for my opinion." Chapter 1816. Damn it. Retreat quickly. Seeing Liu Chuanji and Song Wu rush out, Ningyu's expression changed and he hurriedly shouted at the little Qilin. Ningyu was not a fool. Although Liu Chuanji and Song Wu seemed to be opposing each other on the surface, Ningyu knew very well that Liu Chuanji and Song Wu must have reached some kind of agreement. Song Wu needed to bring the little Qilin to the Pill Emperor city, so the ownership of the little Qilin would definitely belong to him. As for everything else, it would probably be given to Liu Chuanji. Actually, this was what Ningyu was most worried about. Liu Chuanji and Song Wu were both at the peak of the Sage Realm, so they could continue to oppose each other. Once the two of them joined forces, it would be an extravagant hope to continue to drag on. Bring Zhong Shuai here. Ningyu forced himself to calm down and said in a deep voice, if Song Wu dares to continue to attack, kill Zhong Shuai for me. Whoosh. Ning Lu grabbed Zhong Shuai's head, threw it to the ground, and stepped on it. You can't catch the wolf without sacrificing the child. Song Wu was close to going crazy. In front of the Qilin, he naturally did not care about a mere late Sage Realm Zhong Shuai. Crack. Seeing that Song Wu had no intention of stopping, Ning Lu made a prompt decision and stomped his right foot hard. A crisp sound was heard. Zhong Shuai couldn't understand why. Song Wu clearly had the chance to save him, so why was he so ruthless? Split up. For Song Wu and Liu Chuanji, since their plan had been seen through by Ningyu, they would not be able to speed up if they continued to work together. On the contrary, they would slow down their pace. Therefore, they immediately split up. Song Wu rushed towards the little Qilin, while Liu Chuanji rushed towards Jiyu Yang and Ziyun. As for Jin Fei, he carefully retreated to the other side and chose to hide. Although the little Qilin, Jiyu Yang, and Ziyun were stalled, Jin Fei could feel that Ning Lu, who had advanced to the peak of the Sky Supreme Realm, was already comparable to a late Sage Realm warrior. Coupled with An Haoping, who had the cold-looking man with him, Jin Fei would probably become a live target if he appeared in Ningyu's sight again. In order to survive, Jin Fei did not dare to stay in the same place. Where are you going? However, after killing Zhong Shuai, Ninglu's attention instantly shifted to Jing Fei. Now that Jing Fei wanted to escape, he naturally couldn't hide it from Ninglu's eyes. With a roar, Ninglu raised his speed to the limit and dashed toward Jin Fei in an instant. Previously, Ninglu's cultivation was low, so even if he wanted to deal with Jin Fei, he couldn't do anything. Now that the opportunity had come, how could Ninglu let go of such a good opportunity? Rumble. Ninglu's speed was very fast. In almost an instant, he arrived in front of Jin Fei. A loud explosion was heard. Following this, the battle between Ninglu and Jin Fei took place. An Haoping, go and help Ziyun and the rest. Ningyu stared at the battlefield of Ninglu and Jin Fei. Then he looked away and said in a low voice, Zhong Qiong, go to the depths of the fairy crystal lode and see if the teleportation formation is still usable. Whoosh, whoosh. Hearing Ningyu's order, An Haoping and Zhong Qiong didn't dare to be slow. They dashed out in two different directions. The reason why An Haoping went to help Ziyun and the rest was because Ziyun and Jiyu Yang couldn't contend with a pinnacle sacred realm cultivator. If they didn't have any external help, the two of them would definitely be the first to be defeated. Jiyu Yang was a late-stage sacred realm pellet puppet. His overall strength wasn't weak. Ziyun was a mid-stage sacred realm pellet puppet. Her battle strength wasn't any weaker than Jiyu Yang. In fact, she might even be slightly stronger than Jiyu Yang. As for An Haoping, he was a peerless expert of the demon spirit realm and clan. If the three of them worked together, they could at least delay Song Wu for 10 minutes. If they could delay Song Wu for 10 minutes, the situation on the little Qilin's side wasn't as optimistic. Firstly, the little Qilin's cultivation was only in the mid-stage sacred realm. Secondly, Liu Chuanji wasn't as strong as Song Wu. I have to find a way. Ningyu moved his feet left and right with a sinister expression on his face. Everyone could understand the current situation. They definitely couldn't drag it out. Whichever side couldn't hold on first would be the first to be defeated. No matter how he looked at it, the little Qilin and the rest would be defeated first. The teleportation array can still be used, but it requires at least 20 immortal crystals. Just when Ning Yu was thinking about how to resolve the current predicament, Zhong Qiong's voice suddenly entered his ears. Ning Yu was slightly taken aback by the voice that came into his ears. Then, he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Since 20 immortal crystals could activate the teleportation array, then Ning Yu might as well take a gamble and enter the teleportation array to reach the Pill Emperor City. Even if the other end of the teleportation array was within the Pill Emperor City, Ning Yu could use his powerful soul force to disrupt the direction of the teleportation array and teleport himself to another direction. Spatial turbulence. As matters stood, Ning Yu had already decided to trigger the spatial turbulence. For all the teleportation arrays, the one thing that they didn't want to encounter the most was spatial turbulence. If they were to encounter the spatial turbulence in the teleportation array, it wouldn't bode well for them. However, no matter how dangerous it was in the spatial turbulence, it wasn't half as dangerous as staying here. Zhao Guocheng, go to the square restaurant and inform Grandmaster Xingyun and the rest. Tell them that those who want to go to the Pill Emperor City can set off now. Those who don't want to go can return to the Thousand Leaf Empire first. Regarding the matter of Supreme Palace, Ning Yu didn't tell Zhao Guocheng. However, Ning Yu knew that even if he didn't reveal Supreme Palace, Grandmaster Xingyun would be able to analyze some things from a few words. Leave it to me. Zhong Guocheng patted his chest and guaranteed, I will definitely pass the news to Grandmaster Xingyun accurately. If others fought fiercely, Zhong Guocheng would be no different from cannon fodder if he stayed. Therefore, Zhao Guocheng couldn't wait to leave. Now that there was such a good opportunity to leave and he wouldn't be threatened by Ning Yu, Zhao Guocheng was naturally very excited. Swoosh! With a flash, Zhao Guocheng hurriedly tore the void and disappeared. The other 3 battlefields had already reached the climax. At this time, Zhao Guocheng's departure naturally wouldn't attract their attention. I advise you to be more obedient. Otherwise, I won't be polite, Songwu said coldly after forcing the little Qilin back with a move. I want to see how you will be rude to me. The little Qilin revealed a disdainful look and said, your strength isn't much stronger than mine. You want to capture me alive? Dream on. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for Ning Yu. Songwu knew that what the little Qilin said was not without reason. The current him indeed found it difficult to capture the little Qilin alive. However, just because it was difficult to capture it alive didn't mean that it couldn't be captured alive. In a blink of an eye, Songwu's figure flashed out and charged straight at Ning Yu. Moreover, in the process of advancing, Songwu suddenly erupted with 3 terrifying auras. 3 auras attacked Ning Yu from 3 directions, leaving only Ning Yu's only escape route. Chapter 1817. At this time, Songwu's intention to chase Ning Yu into the immortal crystal vein was already very clear. There was a teleportation array in the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein. No need to think, Songwu definitely wanted to chase Ning Yu to the teleportation array. Songwu's thinking was very simple. As long as he chased Ning Yu to the teleportation array, little Qilin would definitely follow. Second, at that time, he could suddenly activate the teleportation array and bring Ning Yu and little Qilin away. The other end of the teleportation array was located inside the Pill Emperor City's Alchemy Union. Here, due to Liu Chuanji eyeing covetously from the side, Songwu did not dare to really use his full strength to capture little Qilin alive. It was better to be safe than sorry. If little Qilin resisted with all its might and used some super strong trump card to injure him, the one who would benefit in the end would probably be Liu Chuanji. Don't look at how he and Liu Chuanji were currently in a cooperative relationship. Once one suffered injuries, the other would definitely hit him while he was down. Therefore, Songwu wanted to activate the teleportation array and bring Ning Yu and little Qilin into the Pill Emperor City. Not good. Little Qilin had been fighting fiercely with Songwu. Seeing that Songwu turned to attack Ning Yu and wanted to chase Ning Yu to the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein, his expression immediately changed and he rushed out, wanting to save Ning Yu before he entered the teleportation array. Fight. However, little Qilin might have overlooked Songwu's strength. Since Songwu decided to chase Ning Yu to the teleportation array, he definitely made preparations to stop him. Swish. Suddenly, a scroll scurried out from Song Wu's body and rushed towards little Cheline with a terrifying speed. Damn it! Little Cheline originally rushed out with all its strength. Now that it was blocked by the scroll, it naturally slowed down a little. This time, little Cheline slowed down and directly pulled apart the distance between it and Song Wu. What should we do? Seeing Ning Yu being chased into the immortal crystal vein by Song Wu, Yun Mu revealed a worried expression and asked, "What else can we do? Hurry up and pick up all the scattered immortal crystals, then we go over too." Old man Tianji said solemnly. "We go over too." Yun Mu's mouth opened, feeling somewhat incredulous. Everyone knew that the other end of the teleportation array would be very dangerous. What was the difference between entering the teleportation array at this time and courting death? To be honest, Yun Mu didn't want to follow them. Don't say that I didn't warn you. Ning Yu isn't a simple person. He won't do something he isn't confident in. After saying that, old man Tianji rushed towards the immortal crystal vein. Plunder the immortal crystals first. Yun Mu clenched his teeth and barked at the talisman supremacy. Only by increasing my strength can I stand in an invincible position. Poochie. The actions of Yun Mu and Elder Tianji were only a small interlude. Liu Chuanji didn't feel much pressure facing Jiyu Yang, Ziyun, and Haoping, and the rest by himself. The only thing that made Liu Chuanji feel a little troubled was the cold-looking man that An Haoping brought along. Although Liu Chuanji didn't believe that the cold-looking man would really blow himself up, he changed his mind when he saw Ning Yu enter the Fairyland mineral vein. When Ning Yu was around, the cold-looking man definitely wouldn't blow himself up. Now that Ning Yu was rushing towards the Fairyland mineral vein, getting further and further away from him, who knew if the cold-looking man would blow himself up? Therefore, as Liu Chuanji fought, he slowly moved towards the Fairyland mineral vein. In the last battlefield. Originally, Ning Lu had the upper hand against Jin Fei. In addition to Zhong Qiong joining the battle, the balance was completely tilted towards Ning Lu. Jin Fei felt the pressure getting heavier. Where there's life, there's hope. Jin Fei wasn't a fool. With the current situation, there was no reason for him to stay. We'll meet again in the future. Since you've offended the Jin family, all of you shall die. Before leaving, Jin Fei didn't forget to leave behind a ruthless sentence. After that, Jin Fei forcefully tore through the void and entered. Due to the existence of the other two battlefields, Jin Fei believed that Ning Lu would definitely not chase after him. In the past, Ning Lu might not chase after Jin Fei. He would turn around and help Ning Yu. But now, Ning Lu knew that even if he joined the other two battlefields, he wouldn't be of much help. It was better to get rid of Jin Fei completely. Lunatic. Feeling that Ning Lu was chasing after him desperately, Jin Fei couldn't help but shout. Wrong. If you had stayed and fought with me, I might not have killed you so early. Ning Lu tore through the void and blocked Jin Fei's way out. He said lightly, "Thank you for running away and giving me an opening." Impossible. Even if I ran away, I would never give you any opening. Jin Fei roared. Really? You can look behind you. Ning Lu shrugged and said, "Don't lie to me. I will never be fooled." Puff. Jin Fei said coldly. Before he finished his sentence, Jin Fei opened his mouth and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking down at the small part of the sword that was sticking out of his heart, Jin Fei turned his head and looked behind him. When he saw the familiar face behind him, Jin Fei trembled and fell to the ground. Phew. Seeing that Zhong Qiong had killed Jin Fei, Ning Lu let out a long breath and said, "Thank you. Give me his primordial spirit." Zhong Qiong hesitated for a moment and then flicked his wrist and threw the flying sword to Ning Lu. At their level, when killing an enemy, the first thing they would do was to detain the enemy's primordial spirit. Originally, Zhong Qiong wanted to use Jin Fei's primordial spirit to exchange for his own. But he knew that with only Jin Fei's primordial spirit, and Ning Lu being the main force in this battle, he probably wouldn't be able to gain Ning Yu's trust and exchange for freedom. Ning Lu didn't care what Zhong Qiong was thinking. He caught the flying sword and without saying anything, he swallowed Jin Fei's primordial spirit on the spot. This, seeing that Ning Lu had swallowed Jin Fei's primordial spirit, Zhongqiong opened his mouth and his eyeballs almost fell out of his eye sockets. He had seen others swallowing primordial spirits before, but he had never seen it like this. Burp. After swallowing Jin Fei's primordial spirit, Ninglu didn't forget to burp and pat his stomach in satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. After advancing to the pinnacle of Sky Supreme, my devouring ability has increased by quite a bit. Ninglu was the world tree. At its peak, the world tree could swallow anything. Ninglu was confident that his devouring ability was probably much stronger than the Dark Emperor's. He shook his head and got rid of these thoughts in his mind. Ninglu knew that now wasn't the time to think about these things. Since Ningyu had gone to the deepest part of the celestial crystal vein, he had to go there too. Ningyu had asked him about the celestial crystal vein before. Even though part of the reason for entering the celestial crystal vein now was because of Song Wu's coercion, Ninglu knew that Ningyu definitely wanted to enter the celestial crystal vein himself. Activate the teleportation array. This was the escape route that Ningyu had thought of from the start. Of course, this method was the best method out of all other methods. It was a desperate measure. Ninglu felt that Ningyu was definitely prepared. He planned to activate the teleportation array at all costs and have a good fight with Song Wu and the others in the void. Chapter 1818. Swoosh. In the dilapidated immortal crystal mine, several figures were galloping. The three figures at the front were Ningyu, Song Wu, and Little Chelin. The few figures in the middle were Liu Chuanji, Jiyu Yang, and the rest. As for the few people at the back, they were Ninglu, Old Man Tianji, and the rest. Don't push it too hard. Song Wu turned around to look at the Little Chelin behind him, then looked at Ningyu in front of him and muttered. Song Wu's original intention was to activate the teleportation array and bring Ningyu and Little Chelin to Alchemy Emperor City. But the current situation was not optimistic for Song Wu. First of all, Liu Chuanji was at the back and he might cause trouble. Secondly, activating the teleportation array required 20 immortal crystals and 3-minute delay for 3 minutes. Song Wu did not have this confidence. Therefore, Song Wu purposely slowed down. He didn't even mind exchanging blows with the Little Chelin to slow down his speed. From Ningyu's actions, Song Wu saw some clues. In other words, Song Wu was basically sure that Ningyu would find a way to activate the teleportation array. Since Ningyu would activate the teleportation array, why not? Rumble. The immortal crystal mine was already very dilapidated, and now that Song Wu and Little Chelin were engaged in an intense battle, no one knew how long the mine could last. Under such circumstances, Little Chelin and Song Wu lowered their attack power at almost the same time. What the hell are they doing? The intense battle between Song Wu and Little Chelin naturally did not escape Liu Chuanji's eyes. Especially when he saw that Song Wu and Little Chelin did not use their full strength, Liu Chuanji became puzzled. Outside the mine, the two of them were fighting to the death. Why did it seem like they had discussed it in the mine? Liu Chuanji was very puzzled. Of course, it was natural that Liu Chuanji would feel puzzled. After all, he did not know that there was a teleportation array in the mine. If he knew that there was a teleportation array in the mine, he would definitely speed up and rush up to destroy it. To Liu Chuanji, he needed everyone downstairs except Little Chelin. If the teleportation array was activated, with Song Wu's character, he would probably drag everyone present into the teleportation array. 20 immortal crystals. After traveling at full speed, Ningyu finally arrived at the deepest part of the immortal crystal vein. Right in front of Ningyu was a huge round millstone. Based on his initial estimation, the round millstone could fit at least a few dozen people. Upon closer inspection, one would see a groove on each of the 4 edges of the round millstone. The design of the groove was very ingenious. It was neither too big nor too small, just the same size as an immortal crystal. Without a doubt, in order to activate this seemingly simple teleportation array, one would need to prepare at least 20 immortal crystals. Where are we going to get 20 fairy crystals? Ningyu stared at the grooves on the edge of the millstone with a solemn look on his face. 20 immortal crystals might not seem like a lot, but it wasn't anything difficult for Ningyu in the past. But now, 20 celestial crystals were enough to make Ningyu helpless. If I had known, I would have grabbed a few immortal crystals on the way here. Ningyu's eyes darted around as he thought of a countermeasure. Without immortal crystals, no matter how capable he was, he wouldn't be able to activate the teleportation array. How troublesome. Song Wu, who was fighting fiercely with the little Cheline, was constantly paying attention to Ningyu's movements. Seeing that Ningyu was standing in front of the round millstone without moving, Song Wu wished he could go over and activate the teleportation array himself. However, Song Wu knew that Ningyu could activate the teleportation array without any problems, but he couldn't. After thinking about it, Song Wu decided to pretend to be hit by the little Cheline. At the same time, a storage bag accidentally flew out of his sleeve, and the storage bag happened to contain 20 immortal crystals. Song Wu was a practical person and did what he said. He immediately revealed a flaw to the little Cheline. Poof! The little Cheline was very cooperative. It grabbed onto Song Wu's flaw and attacked Song Wu's back. Swoosh! A huge force came from his back, causing Song Wu to taste sweetness in his throat as his body fell straight forward. It was just as Song Wu thought. When his body fell forward, a storage bag suddenly flew out of his sleeve. The direction of the storage bag happened to be where Ningyu was. Piak! Seeing a storage bag flying towards him, Ningyu didn't hesitate too much as he raised his right hand and grabbed the storage bag firmly. 20 immortal crystals. After discovering that there were a total of 20 immortal crystals in the storage bag, Ningyu secretly became cautious. There were too many coincidences in the world. However, a coincidence like Song Wu's was indeed rare. Activating the teleportation array required 20 immortal crystals, and there were 20 immortal crystals in the storage bag that Song Wu threw out. Let's activate the teleportation array first. Ningyu gritted his teeth and decided to activate the teleportation array first. Only by activating the teleportation array would he have a way out and a chance of survival. Otherwise, if he were to waste time here, there wouldn't be any way out at all. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, with a thought, Ningyu opened the storage bag and poured out all 20 immortal crystals into the grooves around the millstone. The 20 immortal crystals entered the grooves. At first, they all lay flat in the grooves without any changes. 2 minutes passed and there were still no changes to the immortal crystals. Even Ningyu felt that he might have been cheated. Kai kai. However, just as the thought appeared in Ningyu's mind, he heard a few crisp sounds. Needless to say, the sounds came from the immortal crystals that were thrown into the grooves 2 minutes ago. Kai kai kai. The shocking scene of 20 immortal crystals making sounds at the same time shocked Ningyu. 1 more minute. The immortal crystals had worked. The happiest person wasn't Ningyu but Song Wu. At this moment, Song Wu was extremely excited. He was so excited that he almost jumped up. The teleportation array was activated and Ningyu and little Cheline were attracted to the millstone. Then, they went through the teleportation array together to Pill Emperor City. It had to be said that Song Wu's entire plan was perfect, so perfect that it was almost flawless. However, Song Wu neglected one thing. He was not the only one who wanted to activate the teleportation array. Ningyu also wanted to activate it. Song Wu knew that there was still 1 minute before the teleportation array would be completely activated. Ningyu also knew that. Song Wu only hoped that only 2 or 3 people knew, but Ningyu hoped that everyone present knew that the teleportation array was about to be activated. Although in the space, whoever had the stronger soul force had the advantage, nothing was absolute. For example, Song Wu. Although the strength of Song Wu's soul force was not as strong as Ningyu's, in the space, Ningyu might not be able to compete with Song Wu head-on by relying on the strength of peak level 9 soul force. He might even be schemed against by Song Wu. However, with Liu Chuanji, it was different. Liu Chuanji and Song Wu were on opposite sides. It was basically impossible for him to help Song Wu. Therefore, if Ningyu wanted Liu Chuanji to come forward to help, he must at least be able to check and balance Song Wu. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,